Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. I'm glad we're meeting actually.
Yeah,
So good to meet you.
yeah. I know it's the weirdest time to feel like people that you kind of know because you're sort of in touch with, or I don't know, just keep up with, that eventually you might meet, or when you do meet, you're like, we've been in contact for several years before we've ever met each other. So
Yeah, I was actually trying to think, because it's almost like before this virus situation has pressed pause on the normal routes of communication, or being able to travel, or being able to actually go and meet some of these people, acquaintances, friends from around the world. It's like you're almost caught in this haze of online communication via direct messages or responding to stories and stuff like that. I suppose over the last few years, that's kind of what it's been like, looking at people's posts on their social media, and that's the kind of keeping up with people like yourself. It's like it's strange that we meet in this way, because I had actually envisaged meeting you and the homies in a slightly different context. Actually, I really planned to be with you guys in person, and I guess that goes to say something about the strength of all of the work that you and the guys have been doing. It made me feel like I've got a home over there at some point to come and join with you.
man, yeah, it's a bummer. Or it's good to meet you. It's a bummer that we couldn't have come out to meet in person and like skate and do the thing, this summer, or this past summer. But maybe that'll come around at some point, right?
I'm confident.
But
yeah,
I mean, I think I have no like I have no real guesstimate on like a timeline, right? But I think it'll swing back at some point. But it's a bummer because I was so excited for the London skate trip, and I've been in the airport like briefly, but I've never actually gotten to just go and spend time in anywhere in the UK. So it's kind of like just one of those bucket list places I'd love to go. My girlfriend's been wanting to go for a long time, and she likes she enjoys watching a lot of skating edits as well. So like I feel like the London scene is one of those ones that she's I think most of us enjoy what it is that you guys have done through the years out there. But we were both looking forward to a London trip, and hopefully can do it at some point.
It's no surprise to me that your partner
sorry, I think this might be bad. I have like a very makeshift shoebox truck here. Let me see if I can add something to get a little bit of height. Yeah,
because what you can see is like me, but actually what I'm looking at is essentially my bedroom with this ridiculous setup in front of me. I've got this rickety table with a rotating stool with my laptop on top of it, and then I've got wires everywhere.
Nice.
Absolute mess. But you're looking much better now there, actually.
Okay, cool.
But it's interesting because you said that your partner likes watching the skate edits. Is that something because there's different, I mean, we can just get straight into like kind of skate edits almost. I mean, there's gradations of edits, of skate films, of single edits that have different qualities to them. Not all of them are going to be suitable viewing for a partner. I mean, like my girlfriend, I've been with her for over 12 years. So, skating isn't this like alien weird thing that I go off and do and keep separate. And it's like, she understands in its almost entirety what it is and what I'm doing. And, what we do with the sections and stuff like that. Is that something that you've sought out to do, to like show your partner like some of the, I mean, it's undeniable the films that you work on are spectacular and beautiful to watch, and is that something that she's just sort of interested in by way of like just being around you, or have you sort of sought to like kind of show her what that aspect of your life's like, with the filmmaking and the videos and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Lynn's the coolest. She's just one of those awesome people that you sometimes get lucky enough to kind of bump into and spend a big chunk of time with, and I've been really lucky that way. So we've been together for I think it's like about 9 years, something. I don't know. We have like a vague start date because of
I
just
actually
kind of
don't
like,
know
you know,
either.
hanging out and like,
I
oh,
don't
sorry.
know
Well,
either.
yeah. But anyways, she, yeah, I think from like when we started seeing each other, I would tell her, you know, I'm going to go skating or I'm going to go I think I was really specific about being like, I'm going to go rollerblading. And at that time I was mostly skating with, I feel like JT Truitt. And, so it'd be like JT and I going off on like a Saturday after she and I had maybe spent the evening before, you know, hung out or something a few times in the week. And when I would say I was going to rollerblade, she just wouldn't ask me what that meant really. And I was kind of just like, I'm just going to say I'm going to say I skate, but I'm going to clarify and like be specific and upfront. Like, but I'm also not going to like go out of my way to define that for you. So for a while, I think we were together for like 6 months before she realized like that we were out doing the kind of skating that we all do. And she just sort of took it on my word that I was rollerblading, you know, thought she liked spending time with me enough that she was okay with me just being at like there's a really popular lake around here that everyone just does sort of fitness skating and in a big lap. So she thought that we were out filming like laps around a large, like, you know, reservoir or you know, mile long jog that just, yeah, very different kind of skating. So when I finally, like, we were together for, you know, a handful of months, and I was like, do you want to see like what we've been filming or like what clips JT's been getting? And she was like very like in her head, she told me later, like, I was super like, this is so lame, but like I'm starting to kind of enjoy spending time with you, so I guess I'll kind of like take an interest or like let you show me this thing you do. And she was, you know, when I showed her like clips of some things we had filmed, and at that point it wasn't very many, I think I'd only made a few edits, but she was like, whoa, this is so much cooler than like I thought. I don't know, which is no knock on that type of skating, but it's just a testament to that Lynn was so anyways, to answer your question, she enjoys watching skating edits, but it's funny thinking back on like her intro to skating edits was like her thinking that we were going to be just showing her time trials or cones or that kind of stuff. And she was down for that too, which is, you know, really neat because I feel like a lot of people, when you meet them, whether it's a friend or it's some kind of like a romantic relationship, you know, there's maybe a little bit of a waiting period before you really like let whoever know, because I feel like sometimes that it's kind of like maybe like a barrier between like a friendship or a relationship. Some people maybe just don't know what to think of it. Others maybe think it's kind of weird or lame. And
Is it
and then I think also too, sorry, go ahead.
No, it was just making me think, because I always seek to define like skating. I actually describe it as skating or aggressive skating. So I kind of say like I skate. I do sometimes lean into describing it as rollerblading if somebody is really kind of looking at me like, what? But is it that rollerblading as an actual word? Is it just a bit goofy sounding? Like it never actually that well with me, like just the definition of what I'm doing as rollerblading. And I know people have that as a little bit of a bugbear, that it seems to like signify the non-aggressive style of skating, which would be, as you were sort of saying, maybe like doing time trials or cones or laps, which is nothing wrong with that at all. But it seems to like that's almost like one of the first impressions that somebody gets. And so I can imagine keeping the true nature of skating a little bit guarded from somebody who you're kind of like, you know, starting to see more of.
Yeah. Yeah, and uh I think I'll sometimes until you really see what all of us are out doing when we go out for and disappear for like, 8, 10, 12 hours in a day, or like some big chunk of a day, and you'd be like, what was this day of skating that you did, where did you go, or like how, you did that for how long? And so I don't know. Yeah, it's it's been funny to kind of show her early things like that. And she had never seen, I think her point of, or her frame of reference for rollerblading was like 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 her house in California is like sort of in kind of like a farmland sort of an area, a little bit pastoral like that. And so there's just like not tons of paved roads right now, like, or like her driveway is just kind of like loose gravel. So her earliest experience rollerblading was like on loose gravel. Like she and her brother got skates and they tried skating on that shit.
Was that
so
part
she
of
really
like
had
that
like
90s
no
boom?
Yeah, exactly. Because she's like 35 now. And so she was in that sweet spot of kind of like skates were just around, you'd buy them for kids this kind of ubiquitously, like you'd buy a bike and like you buy now like a scooter or whatever. So anyways, she is like, seen skates when she's little, skated on like devil's gravel, like loose loose rocks essentially. And then didn't really ever see it again, and then met me, and then mentioned I rollerblade. And I don't know, I didn't want to like have it be like the biggest part of us meeting and talking about something, but yeah, I was very like upfront about just mentioning that it was something I was out doing, and it took a while to kind of like show what and define like what that was. But yeah, getting back like the kind of like initial question, or kind of like ideas, like Lynn definitely, like when we get footage she wants to see, and like you can't see right now, but like there's a couch that's kind of our living room area, and I'm sitting at my desk, and so like just by virtue of sharing a space, like she'll like see me uploading a clip or whatever, or like as I put it together. Sometimes she'll just come around and in the past it would have been sometimes like the boys come over and we sit down and string together the clips from the day and just watch them and kind of, I don't know, just fiddle with them, watch them. And yeah, so I mean, I feel like she has a really good eye for skating as a layman person. Like she yeah, I don't know, I feel like she's over time, especially when like we or I would sit down to watch like say a full length or just like an edit that comes out. Like I guess recently we watched Fifth Floor like one morning, or sorry, it was an evening. I watched it again the following morning. Yeah, it was really good. But so like that was the kind of thing where one night she was like, dude, do you want to watch the Sizemore edit tonight? And I was like, yeah. And so like
she would suggest it.
Yeah, sometimes when things like that pop up. Yeah, and not that she's like over the moon about like consuming the stuff, but like she liked that video. She likes yeah, I'd say that generally she just enjoys, and like skateboarding too, the times that we've watched like certain skateboarding videos, like I feel like she's just someone who's like, it's not in her world before she met me, but she does enjoy looking at it, and it's interesting to talk with someone and just sort of like show her like versions of an edit I'll be working on and be like, or like eavesdropping, like I'll be editing and she'll be like, that song sucks, like you're not gonna edit to that, right? And like I'm like, well, I was like, I feel a little differently now, but like but not that that's ever kept me from like making an edit, because like for instance in Chancer in 3, JT's song, which I love, and it's like a Cocteau Twins song, stuck in my head still. She just can't stand it, like she hates that. So it's fun to, but she loves JT skating, so it's fun to, I don't know, to kind of always be able to access that like outsider's perspective.
When you say
yeah,
like,
and I mean
I was just sorry, Carter. I was going to say, when you say like a layman's kind of impression or a layman's understanding, like what are the things that she would sort of? I mean, obviously you've just said in terms of a sound, like a song rather, which there's some songs
Mhm.
that you're sort of instantly in love with and you just wander off into them and melt away into them, or they get you amped up, or there's a sort of a melancholic tone or whatever, and we can all relate to that. I mean, if you like
Yeah.
music or you're into music, you can kind of relate almost immediately to the kind of tones or songs or beats that you're into and what's not. So I could understand sort of saying, oh, I don't like that song, that sucks. In terms of the actual like
Mhm.
moves themselves and just the quality of how it looks as a clip, would she sort of say to you things about things that stick out to her about those clips or the moves themselves and stuff like that?
I feel like, yeah, it's I mean, I should clarify too that like Lynn's value like in my life is not just that she's like a good
Yeah,
soundboard for
I'd imagine
editing stuff.
so. I'd imagine so.
Yeah, no, she's like amazing
Sounds well
friend and
cool.
partner, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it is fun to uh, yeah. I don't know if anybody's been in a relationship where they've had to sort of keep their skating to themselves a little bit.
Mm.
I know that I've catered some of like my time and like honest self in other relationships maybe, and even just still in like kind of your professional relationships, or maybe your just work, whatever, like your past or passing friends that maybe you have, but they kind of know that you skate but you don't.
Mm.
So it's nice when, or even whatever family that might be like, you still skateboarding, like, and you're like, yeah, sure. So
I
it's cool to have someone, just anyone in your life, but especially your partner that you spend so much time with, and have a lot of love for them, and then they are down for like what you're making. And but yeah, I would say that she's somebody who, like, she'll see certain spots that we're over the moon for when we get them, and she's like, what a fucking cool spot, and
mm.
I don't know. And then like also I feel like certain moves, like she has some verbiage or like lingo down for like what's being done, but I think she understands the basis for things like a alley fish or something like
Mm.
that, where she's kind of like, oh, he like spun into that and he's going backwards one
Mm.
footed. Like, some of it I think is not lost on her, but she just doesn't have the, like, she'd do a really funny like this week in blading kind of a thing. Like
A
hers would be
breakdown.
great because it'd just be, yeah, it'd be blunt and harsh and funny, and yeah, I don't know, kind of in the know without really knowing much, which is a fun vantage point to kind of sort of know what you're looking at without being able to define it much, or describe it, or like still can describe it, but yeah, it's an interesting peanut gallery. I feel like the JT song is an exception, but for the most part, I feel like if I make an edit that Lynn kind of hates the vibe of, I feel like I'm like not on the right track.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem. I mean, like, I probably, I,
It's a mixed bag.
I definitely relate to that because, like, my partner, although not necessarily versed in the exact terminology, lingo, etc., of the tricks themselves, I think like her takeaways from skating, the sort of composite of what she's looking at, whether that's posture, whether that's like a certain terrain or spot that just looks awesome, whether that's music and how that then looks with what is edited to, and the moves themselves and all that kind of stuff. She can sort of take away from all of those things the main kind of nutshells, and give that sort of quite unique feedback about like an edit or a film or a particular move, and that's something that I appreciate a lot, because she kind of understands like the brevity of skating in terms of me personally, and like how much I've just emptied into skating, and continue to do so for the whole time that we've known each other. So yeah, like she's not the assistant and giving the feedback of the skate edits, but she has seen enough in her time and sort of can delineate what's what with a skate edit. And if she's sort of saying, yeah, I'm not liking that, that's a problem for me. I'm like, oh, Joe doesn't like it. It sucks.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. It's just too much of a bummer, because I've got something wrong there, because she knows me, like, and she kind of gets what I'm trying to do. So I can totally get that. You said that Lynn, she grew up in California, was sort of swept up with a bit, the kind of initial rollerblading boom. Have you always been in the Pacific Northwest? Were you born in Seattle? Is that where you were like born and raised?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. She was alive at a time when skating was like just in most kids, hands, and was like under 10, probably like having skates in her hands at a similar. And I'm like just a few years behind her, so I'm 32 now. But I was also I was born in Seattle, and then also born in a time where like blading was just kind of all around. So it was, it's interesting to think of like how you end up where you end up, and it's funny to think of like how many friends of mine who skated don't skate anymore. But yeah, having that like sort of skating is just at every grade school, on every basketball court, or kind of like blacktop at a time when I'm like 8 years old. And so the way that anyone now still gets a pair of wheels, some pair of bike, scooter, skateboard, there's just lots of blades. But anyways, so I grew up born and raised in Seattle, and still here now.
And so you're born and raised in, you're very much so a Seattle boy. Did you get going with skating in would that have been high school for you? Would you have stumbled across skating with everybody in your class have had skates? And that seems to be most people's like entry point, that they were in school and essentially everybody had skates, and that's just how it got going. Is that sort of a similar thing for you, or is that the same thing for you?
Yes and no. Middle school, just timing wise, it's a little shifted for me. So it would have been, or I guess it would have been grade school, that like we had like a really, really cool gym teacher who just liked quad skating. I think he liked roller disco back in the day, when I look back on it, because he would like dress up in a tutu and like do like the quad thing, and like I think shoot the duck, right? It's like a kind of boned out like drop down Machio roll,
right?
I think it's like a rocket fish frame
rocket mono.
early, like that's the term I remember. Yeah, but so he would do that in a tutu with like a Statue of Liberty like crown and like a wig, and I don't know, he was a cool dude. But he just had skating he would have like maybe twice a month, we would have like a rollerblading day, or quads if you wanted. You do both if you wanted. But he had like a million pairs of skates at the school, not a million, but a shit ton. And so like I feel like I was like maybe in third grade when I first got to try a pair of skates at the school, and we would all just sort of, everyone had access to it there, which is one of those like early memories of thinking like how it is that like I'm able to skate or got into skating, and then thinking about like shit that that's one way for people to find skates and enjoy using them, and kind of maybe get more into it, which is affirming to see that some classes and things like that are still happening, where like kids are being able to like try a pair of skates. But so it's kind of like that with like my sort of friend group then, 5 or 6 kids that like are all pretty stoked on skating. One by one, people get like shitty rec skates, or just crummy, just kind of your run-of-the-mill trash skates that you tend to come into owning as a 10-year-old. Like there's someone's broken things, there's somebody's like hand-me-downs, or they're just like bad cheap budget buys because your parents are kind of like, I don't know how much you like this. I remember my first pair was like a purple and turquoise pair of extendable rollerblade like child skates, so I was able to like move the toes, as like my foot got bigger, and eventually realized like you couldn't grind with them, like I think most of us do if you started with rec skates. So anyways,
grinding was on your head from the get-go. Like grinding was just a thing from the get-go.
I think, yeah, because I mean, at that point, like to place it, like, I guess a number of sort of the early VGs and things probably existed at that point. Because by the time I was like looking at videos in like 6th grade, that was like, it's hard to place it exactly, but by the time I was in 6th grade, so like 3rd grade was like beginning to blade, just rolling around sidewalks and things, figuring out you can like 180 small divots in the ground or curbs, or 2 stairs. Our school had like a 2-stair and like a 5-stair.
That's still kind of aggressive though, right? Like, I mean, it's not
Totally, yeah,
but
totally.
it kind of is.
Yeah, but it's the basis for just kind of like seeking out tricks and like, and I think because my mom has she's from like Boise, Idaho, which gets a fair bit of snow, and so they have a good sort of like, they have a big kind of ski and snowboard culture. So I grew up like getting to go skiing pretty often with my family, so I think that it was already kind of like the roadmap was already there for like seeking out jumps and just terrain that's like thrilling. So like skating, it's like makes a lot of sense to just seek that same, and like where I live there's tons of hills, so it just would start with like you're skating to just stand up on skates, but then like bombing the certain hills around my neighborhood were like big sort of hammers for like child hammers. You're like 10 and so pumped when you finally get the balls to charge this hill. And but yeah, so it was like sort of like a few kids that were into it then, and one of them continued to skate with me like through like the next handful of years, my buddy Tim. But everyone basically had like Fatty Pros or Backyard Bobs, the K2 skates, and that was like the coolest skate. And when I finally got my first pairs of aggressives, it was like doing some amount of like bullshit chores to kind of like demonstrate that like I wanted these things and I was willing to like work for them. And being like 11 or 12, and my parents, after like months of me like kind of just bothering them about it, like we went to like a sporting goods store and got like shitty bad fitting 125s, and they were like American flag color. Like they're like cringy skates then and now, but like that was the entry point to having some soul play and grindable skates,
When you say 125,
like a more supportive skate.
What were they? The K2?
They were like a child K2. They were like a 250 child skate essentially, because it's kind, I think it's like a motorcycle reference where it's like 250 is like kind of the beginnings of a real bike, because I think it was CC, yeah. And so it was like they're just their kid skate, they're yeah, baby's foot.
I had yellow K2s, so I had
yeah, so I eventually got yellow K2s, and I wanted the red 250s so bad because they were just like the popular skate at the moment. And you're like, I'm in 6th grade or 5th grade, I guess, when I'm getting these. And so I'm fairly, wanting to look like the rest of my peers and just doing that sort of thing when you're that age. And but yeah, so yeah. You had the Cesar Moras?
No, Louis Zamora. Like in terms of like
Zamora.
In terms of like the K2 style, like just everything K2 for me was kind of like yellow fatties, Louis Zamora kind of thing. So I was like,
yeah, Louis was definitely one of those names at that moment. Still is like, massively awesome forever. But yeah, at that time, that was definitely the pocket of like him, Jaron Grobe, kind of like ASA Pro Tour from like a certain, like maybe 99 to 2000. And I think that was also like early origins of kind of like finding skating, like that was on TV at weird times. So it was kind of like having fitness skates that don't work yet for grinds, seeing it on TV a little bit, and then having like a gym where people would allow you to skate, and a good big like play yard at the grade school. We eventually got a ledge put in there that's still skatable. It's whatever, But so like
And
having some of
where
those
did you
building
have this
blocks for
ledge
just
put
like
in?
a space to skate
Where did you
at
have
my
this ledge?
grade school.
At your
So it was
school?
like yeah, so like when right as we were all figuring out like how to jump stairs and really kind of like getting the right skates and all that kind of stuff, they built this like just perfect granite ledge, just a one slab, like 20 something feet, what just like a pretty typical length of a ledge to build. And yeah, so then we just had this like perfect item to skate, you know, in addition to like some of us starting to build or figure out how to make our own P rails, that kind of thing. But yeah, so it was like maybe 7 of us aggressive skating at that point, maybe a little more, but something like that, with like some mixed networks of like friends of friends. And then one by one, like 6th grade comes around and it's like, you know, insert pejorative to skate, and things are not cool anymore. They're really lame, and you're not gonna impress anyone. And I mean, we've all seen that in different shades. But yeah, so it was like basically all my friends skating, and then none of them skating except for like 2 or 3, probably 2 people I can think of. Yeah, Tim and my friend Oliver. And then Oliver kind of like was interested in skateboarding too, and just kind of like mixed, like sort of dipped in and out of both of those, but without any like malice for skating. But he kept skating a little bit. But yeah, it was really just my friend Tim and I that kept skating, and then we met other people and made friends through skating. But yeah, everyone kind of like left it from my friend group early on. And then you were asking, you know.
So that lull that you just
So
described,
go ahead.
yeah, that lull of people just sort of taking a break from skating or leaving skating, that first break, was that whilst you were in high school? Was that during?
No,
like...
so that was that. So that was like, that would have been like beginning of 6th grade. So that's like
oh, so early.
But that would be like middle school. So yeah, I was like 12.
Right.
And like that's like basically in a year you could think of like, you know, having 10 people to skate with that are your best friends, and then one of them still wants to be your friend. And then everyone's like, dude, we're like trying to go to a fucking middle school dance and like maybe say we fingered a girl and like, you know, like wear cologne and shit. And like that was like the interest at the time. So it was kind of like, I feel like I didn't fit into that puzzle piece much. And so friend, like Tim was the friend at the time, the one friend at the time, but then it, you know, it expanded to like a few other friends you meet through like skate park interactions and stuff. Yeah,
there ended up being like future lulls where people, because as you say, like you know, middle school, high school concerns might be like, oh, I really like that girl, or I really fancy that, and your whole attention just is about your how you're seen, how, like, what your identity is, and being attractive essentially, or being liked, I guess. But then there was another wave of people leaving skating some years later, I guess, where it was almost like a second round of this isn't cool, and I don't want to be just anchored to skating, and I don't want to look like these people look like, and taken on as these people are taken on. And because I certainly experienced, the kids who I went to school with, there was a whole load of people skating at my high school, and then as
did you guys have good spots there? Or like any spots, I mean to say, just anything to skate?
High school skating isn't really a thing in the UK as much as it is certainly in California and the Pacific Northwest, or basically anywhere in the States. I mean, all of the videos that I'm used to, you know, the foundations of the skate spots were essentially school. It was like school skating, and that was the initial like ideal place to go skating, was that playgrounds with the bench setups, with the ledges, maybe with the rails and that kind of stuff. So school skating in the UK wasn't really a thing. They're not laid out like that. A lot more like kind of crude stuff to skate at schools. Plus, like there's just not really a culture behind it. Like there's a culture of school skating in the States, certainly. And I never really found it to be much of a culture in the UK for school skating. You know, I think certainly now I'd be very reluctant to go anywhere near a school, climbing over you know, getting into a playground and you know, waxing something up. You know, there's just CCTV cameras everywhere. You probably get done for something criminal. Plus, like, I don't really want to do anything where like I'm around kids who I'm like not working with, because I work with kids. You know,
Yeah,
doing
schools have that weird, but like as you get older, I think if you're paying attention, or like yeah, the prospect of going onto schools as an adult
I just
feels like every year it feels weirder. And like we still go, and I think like you said, it's like it's a different situation anywhere you go with like skating's relationship with schools. Are they just, yeah, is it somewhere where like the scene goes, or like do they just not go to schools? But yeah, sorry, it's just as we get older, it feels weirder to end up at schools with like these packs of, you know, men, and no longer really young men anymore, or like
yeah,
you know, getting older, and like, you know, when you have that, and then you, I don't know, it's not like a in and of itself like a bad thing, but there's bad optics to it, for sure.
there's definitely bad optics to it. I think that we're, generally speaking, a lot more sensitive to those protected spaces that children are within, because it's probably come out in our culture, and you know, the kind of vulnerabilities that children are actually subject to, and that's a lot more taken on board by people, because you know, you've had lots of horrific things that have gone on that we've had to sort of take notice of, and you know, try and be aware of, that happens to children. And I think one of the main things, especially because I work with kids, is that I don't really want to be anywhere near their protected spaces when I'm sort of doing stuff that is borderline. You know, I think criminal damage can happen. I think that sometimes when you wax, when you rub brick, when you
Yeah,
you know, chip away at certain materials, then you know, that can be criminal damage. I still do all of that stuff out in the city. I still do all of those things. I definitely play my part. But in schools, when you have to like climb over something, that's when, and
it's
I think
trespassing, and it's like vandalism. I mean, that's what you would be charged with, because
kind of
you're
haven't
making
got,
marks on a surface, and you're entering into a place that you're like not supposed to be, especially if you're hopping a fence, right? But obviously there's like shades of
especially if
gray
you're
there.
hopping
Sometimes
a
the wax
fence.
doesn't show, sometimes you don't really mark it that much, you know, there's all these shades. But I feel you on like the stickiness of being at like a child's playground, with, especially when you're with like, yeah, a few, like it's, I feel like it looks better when you're maybe with one or two people, as opposed to like 10-30-year-old men show up to a child's playground, and guess what, like we're often at least someone is there smoking some, you know, cigarette or marijuana kind of thing, or
Hmm.
maybe there's beer sometimes,
Hmm.
depending on the pack you're rolling with,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
and then there's you know, there's swearing usually, and there's just kind of like everything that comes with like that age,
It's kind of
but it's
adult
showing up.
stuff, isn't it? It's just like you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
like kind of like
And you're
carefree,
not wearing helmets usually, you're doing things that are like dangerous, and not like, it's
bad
not the
example.
pinnacle of teaching a young kid how to maybe like do things, even though they're like, that's not to say what we do is like awful, but it's like it's out of context, and maybe in its entirety it's not all together something that you should just like throw at a 3-year-old, or like the parents who are like thinking, like you said, I still do it, I'm still at schools, but I feel like I appreciate what you have to say about kind of respecting that designated space, like when, you know, you're like, the kids are supposed to be here playing, I'm not supposed to be here, so I really shouldn't have a attitude or like an entitlement about being able to skate at school. Like if it works, it's great, if people are cool, but if I feel like I'm like intruding on a nice family's day out, it feels pretty shitty to be like,
It
I'm gonna get my clip, dude.
it
Like,
makes me
you know.
think of a couple of things. There was this one clip, and I think it's in FOR2,
I
and
think I know what you're talking about.
it's Josh Petty,
Petty with the basketball with the coach,
and
and
he's
the
just
coach is
like,
shouting at him in mid line or
I
whatever.
don't give a fuck who
Yeah,
says what. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and if one of these punk ass kid, maybe I'm being unfair,
yeah.
maybe
I know
he
the
didn't
gist
say
though.
that, but if
I know the
one of these
spirit of what he
kids
said. Yeah.
gets in my way, then that's just what it is, and I don't really care, and I'm willing
And
to
the kids
like,
are there looking at him like, we think you're really cool, man. Like, just like, this is awesome. And he's like, I don't fucking care if I hit these fucking little kids. You're like, shit. Like,
and it's like, that
yeah.
dude's a teacher. There's the guy there is like a teacher
Yeah. He's like
at
totally
work.
in the right, you
He's,
know?
he's at
The
work.
teacher, I mean, the teacher. He's like, dude, don't run over my students. Like, these are like 5, you know, these young kids.
I always thought that was well out of order, and I'm not just, you know, I don't want to, you know, get too into like you know, Josh Petty's like moral and ethical positions when it comes to anything. I always just thought that that particular clip was kind of out of order, and you know, but then you know, I think back to when like me and like my friends used to go to California as gangs of like 20 people. We are like rolling up into schools, not even residents of that country, right? We're like rolling up to schools as a group of like 12 to 15, 20 to 25-year-old guys in schools that we'd heard about from videos, and just walk right in there and have our way with things. And you know, that was quite a brazen thing to do, especially not being residents, you know, in the country. And we never really got into any major trouble. We never really got any police issues, although in saying that, at this very well-known school in California, in Southern California, me and some of the homies got kicked out of this school by a helicopter. And they they came and hovered above us and were just giving us the loudspeakers, just like, please, like, leave this the place now, kind of thing.
That's so creepy.
The schools are like open, right? So just to go back to the kind of accessibility and almost that your school had made a ledge for you. So it's this culture of, it's kind of like,
they didn't like that we skated it though, but they didn't like we skated it, but they're dummies. But sorry, go ahead.
Or what, like, so as soon as it was waxed and slid on, then it was a problem. So I thought they put the ledge down because it was meeting the needs of kids who wanted to like do grinds and stuff like that.
No, it's just the hilarious like architect. I just laugh at like architects who are like, what if we put this here? And like make these things that are like these nowadays. It's like, if they know to cap it, at least they're trying. But the times when they just plop like the perfect thing somewhere, or like lines of them, and you're like, what the fuck did you think? Like, I mean, at that point, like art, you know, considering skating wasn't probably as much about like in the architecture world at that point. But yeah, it wasn't meant for us to skate, and the teachers they were not happy that we were skating it, and that we kept going back when we were well into middle school, you know. And then even beyond then, but you know, at a certain point you stop knowing who it is that there is there, and you're no longer like one of the students that's still skating the school. You're just like some, like we said, some 30-year-old guy who's at this child's playground, and depending on the parent is like, you know, not welcome, or kind of like, oh, that's neat to see them do that.
So like, you would have been skating lots of schools, and you'll still skate schools. Just in terms of like, I mean, when I think about the Pacific Northwest, and just as like an area that's prevalent for skating, one of the things that I think about a lot is Portland. And I think about Portland, Oregon. I think about the Feinbergs. I think about like, you know, Anton Kennedy. Like I think about Bryant Rutledge. I think about Nathan Davies. Like I think about these guys, Aaron Moyel, like, you know, just like all of these guys that were like kind of style
Niños con Bombos. I'm trying to remember.
That's one of the crews for sure.
Or like the crew I can remember like seeing in like whatever VG Battle My Crew 2 or 1 it was. Yeah.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. That's exactly right. I mean, that's the era that I'm kind of thinking about. And
Chris Bray. Sorry, I'm Chris like my Bray. Mind's racing for Bray is like, yeah. Portland's always had sick stuff, but sorry, go ahead.
Well, what was your you know, like, but at this time, what was your appreciation of like the Pacific Northwest scene? Like, is that too big of an area to kind of really think about as a scene, or is it more delineated to city, or is it, there was Portland and there was Seattle. What was all of that? What was your impression of like the scene as a kind of whole, or was it more just, and I suppose just going back to this period of time where you started putting your feet on things to grind, you started needing aggressive skates, you had a group of people who you'd skate. How did you sort of branch out and know that there are other people in your hood that were skating or in that area, Pacific Northwest?
I think when some of it, like, being like 12 to say 15, there's not a ton of like, or at least for me at that point, there wasn't a ton of like pulling the thread all the way off the sweater, like thinking all the way down the line. So I feel like, I had been seeing like a local series of videos made by a local skater who, I knew that they and their friends would go to the skate park, the local skate parks I would frequent, like, I would see them there sometimes. So for me, the scene was kind of like this one pack of 10 guys is kind of like, that's rollerblading. And I didn't think in too much about, I guess, and I was seeing it on TV. And so I was seeing, but it was, there was just this like lack of, I don't know what, it's pretty straightforward, but like lack of continued thinking about like what's outside of my direct sphere. So it's kind of just like, okay, so like these guys go to the skate park, like my cousin rollerblades in Boston, he can do a 900. These guys rollerblade on TV. And then like my 3 friends that I know from the skate park, they all skate too. But slowly it's like you kind of see that, Portland, like Feinberg, I think was the first person I can think of that
I suppose that's a better question, like
defined Portland or defined like Oregon being like kind of a place that skating's happening too. But sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I suppose like almost like a better question would be, when did you find out about Feinberg?
Yeah, dude, like, because he put Portland on the map for sure. All those other names you were talking about too, like I remember that, they had a really healthy scene at the same, I think a lot of cities had a healthy scene at that time period, like late 90s, early 2000s, because of just the timeline of rollerblading and how many people were participating. Like we talked about architecture, like the fact that a lot of spots at that point weren't things that people like knew you would skate, or they didn't, like the culture, like the zeitgeist didn't have skating. Like now I think it's even though like people don't really know what's going on there if they're out of the loop, I think there's some understanding of like that people do skate. Whereas at that point, I think it was new enough in culture, like writ large, that like, you'd have a strong scene in every city because there was so many things to skate, and blading was just taking off, or at one of its points of taking off. Like you said, it's interesting to see like the periods of like lulls or like spikes of growth or kind of excitement or like activity in blading. But at that point, I only really knew that like south of Seattle there was skating in Tacoma happening, and I guess at that point really just there, and sort of central Seattle was the only stuff that I was like around or exposed to too much. So, but to answer your question better, I guess, like I think maybe when I was like 17 was when, or maybe no, it was more like 14, I guess 15. There was a really awesome local filmer named Tyler who he ended up through, however, probably AOL instant messenger is my guess. Like kind of like this, like, touching some contact with someone in Portland area, and then skating with people like Eric Faust and who else would have been there? Gosh, I'm drawing like a total blank on just Portland scene. Sorry, Portland, it's all love, but it's early. But yeah, so I think around then I knew that like some of my friends would take trips to there, and it was like this cool, and I was never able to go because it was like my parents were like, oh God, they're so bad. They're responsible for their teenage son. They don't want to just turn him loose into a car. But at the time I was like bummed about that. But it's like probably a decent choice on their part. They didn't fucking know what they. I mean, they would have been signing me up for stuff they probably didn't want me to do at that point.
Yeah, probably.
And realistically, was probably a little young, like because it would have been like a 14-year-old in a car with like 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds. You know,
would that have been like an hour and a half drive or something like that? Would that have a major kind of, you're going really far away from home?
3 hours. So
3 hours,
not crazy, right, but enough that like, you know, sending your child into the world like that, maybe, you know, you're kind of like, yeah, maybe in a few years, bud. Like,
but like,
we'll see. Like
that was something that it seems like for you or I, that maybe we were sort of like thrust into, or we jumped into opportunities to kind of go out into those sorts of situations maybe earlier than some of our peers would have. So like,
did you grow up with like being like a quite younger teen or something like that, skating with like a decently bit older like group of guys, or did you grow up skating with like more like
probably more like my age. I think most of when I first started skating, pretty much everybody was exactly my age, because it would have been the guys who were in my class and in my year group, because I was really within those boundaries of like my year group, my class. These are the guys who skate. These are guys who I can connect with. I'm on a wavelength with because we're the same age. And I think, you know, when I left school, it was still basically my generation. There are some friends of mine who are still dear friends of mine who I really kind of started skating with that are a couple of years above me, but I didn't feel like I was kind of in some strange or dangerous scenario going out with any of those guys. I think London, by way of what it was like in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was a sketchy place, and I don't think that was fully known by my parents. I don't think the news really, I don't think they appreciated that going out as a group of late teens or, you know, early 20 somethings could potentially have you getting into a physical conflict with other groups of young people. So it wasn't so much that I was being led by older people in and getting into adult situations before my time. I just think that London, by way of what it was like then, and just being in a gang, drew you that sort of attention whereby conflict could happen, and then you're not in necessarily an adult situation, you're probably in a dangerous situation with other kids your age and of a similar age, and there were kids that like robbing, like, and getting jacked or getting robbed. Certainly something that was a big concern when I was in my late teens and early 20s going into London. And, you know, this idea that, okay, well, we've kind of got to be able to defend ourselves. Like, you've got to be able to, you know, tell people to, like, you know, get away from you, or, and if they then, you know, kind of got into your personal space trying to take things from you, then obviously, you know, you'd need to kind of do things about that. And I basically shielded everything like that to my parents. I mean, they didn't know anything about those sorts of situations that were really kind of
they're
dangerous.
like, how was your day? How was skating? Like, oh, it was easy. It was cool. And like, meanwhile, you had this, you know, maybe like rattling experience earlier that day. Maybe like you said, like physically dangerous potential. And then you're just kind of like, oh yeah, we were just around the neighborhood. It was good. Or like,
yeah, we almost got in like a gang fight in an area of London that we do not really have any business being in. You know,
it's so funny that I feel like that's a big part of everyone in skating's, like, if they find skating early enough to be like very much a minor, like they that phrase, you have no business being here, you pack of like 15-year-olds. And I can also imagine the time in skating that you guys maybe would have been going around, the certain look of baggy clothes and kind of the that attitude. I can picture right now. I could draw a picture of the pack of people going into a place where it's kind of like you stick out like a sore thumb, and there's just a few things to attract unwanted attention
just a
to you.
few.
Yeah.
And it was so like it was so oblivious almost at the time that we would draw that kind of attention. And I guess like my crew, or like my group of skaters, like when going into London became a rhythm, that we were going into London almost every weekend, filming, doing all that kind of stuff. It was sort of like built into us that we needed to be kind of hard. We needed to be able to like be tough and defend ourselves if possible, and go into like these areas that we're saying we've got the right to be there. Like, we're going to go skating. That's just what we do. And it's kind of like that's a bit
I
of
love that.
That's a bit of a short-sighted attitude to have, because actually now when I'm in estates where people live, or if I'm approaching anything to skate, I'm almost looking for a way of gaining permission, or a way of saying or expressing verbally, at least, or in any other way, like, this is kind of what we're doing and we do not mean you any harm. It's just like I would understand if you want me to leave, kind of thing. And
Yeah,
we'll
totally.
do that, you know. And it's just quite funny to think about, like, as you were saying, this gang of like baggy joggers wearing kids with chains out, you know, looking the way that we were doing, like trying to, you know, making a lot of noise and waxing stuff and doing all this kind of thing, you know. And yeah, that was Seattle rough like that, you know? Was Seattle like a rough place, you know? What was that like growing up, you know?
No, I mean, like, for sure, like any place, I imagine, you know, you could there were still parts of the city that, you know, had some rough things happening. I mean, there's rough living kind of anywhere you can go, in some part of the place that you're at. But it wasn't like, yeah, it definitely wasn't I mean, I grew up in a nice neighborhood, but it's close to the city, so it was really easy to just like bomb a few hills and I'm like in downtown. And then, like, you know, parts of it have like sort of been the local sort of like kind of like sketchier place that you might see, like, just sort of vagrancy and kind of like, yeah, just we could put some words on it, but yeah, like a general homeless population, and also like a rougher, like meaner demeanor, meaner demeanor, just yeah, just an attitude of like roughness and kind of anger that, you know, like as a skate spot, you're kind of like, I don't know that I'm gonna go skate that ledge that guy's sitting on. We had some of that, but like not a ton. And I feel like all of it, for like the group I was running with, and where, I don't know, I do feel like we ended up in some places where under any other circumstance we would not be welcome, but because of this oddity of blading, and like at that point there was a good, I feel like a decent mix, like, of like early years of skating where like we had a pretty varied, like, just sort of racial, size, age. It was just this big mix of like tiny kids to like late teen or 20-year-old people, mix of like black, Asian, Latino, and just kind of like white guys. And so, you know, when you end up in this just hodgepodge group somewhere that maybe like I wouldn't be able to go on my own and like fit in or kind of like blend in a bit, I feel like that made for like some of those areas that maybe would be, what am I trying to say? Like, I don't know that I would have been able to like be there as much if not for kind of the mixed group that I was in, you know what I'm saying? And that's just by virtue of like 15-year-olds that go to high school or middle school together that, you know, are like, oh, we all skate. So then you end up on one side of the city that, yeah, like I don't live in, and, you know, is like a, I don't know. I guess just the phrase of like, you have no business being here. It's like not really, you know, any other time, and people would be like, why the fuck are you here? But they're still like that. So like, what are you doing on rollerblades? You know?
I love that. I mean, and again, it's something that I could like resonate with, this kind of permission that you get by being a fairly diverse group, size, age. I mean, in terms of ethnicity, as I was growing up, not that diverse, I've got to say. I mean, in a way, I kind of was the diversity within that group for the most part, but I always remember those responses to us as a group of kind of like, oh, what, like you're from that part of London, you're from that part of London, you're from that part of
Yep.
London, but you all come here
You're
to
all
do.
here
and
for what?
and yeah, it's that kind of like diversity, and also, yeah, as you say, that hodgepodge kind of motley group that sort of disarms people in a way. It's kind of something that disarms people, and you gain permission, because you're giving that person some different looks about what is this group doing. It's not threatening, it doesn't seem threatening, but it's kind of like, you know, it is the question of like, what the fuck is skating? You know, like what is it that you're actually doing here? You know, sliding on.
On that, on like kind of thinking about that, and then also the schools thing. It's interesting to think about, like, gosh, I'm like losing my train of thought thinking about a few different things with school. But yeah, it's funny. I guess I kind of know. You know, just going around, like, I don't really give a fuck about the level of property destruction we do. I feel like it's pretty minimal, and it tends to be like very what do I want to say? Like, it's not, I won't find a word for it, but it's not harming any person's body other than our bodies. If, you know, as long as like people are spotting traffic ways and these kinds of things. So it's kind of like, and then the amount of actual like damage or wear and tear tends to be so minimal that it's just like, you know, we all know it, but it's kind of like, if that's what you're really concerned with, like that harm in the world, like, I've got to tell you, there's just like bigger fish to fry. There's more important things that like you could be putting your time into being like a hero about. But
that person's going to be well stoked if you say that to them.
Oh yeah, no, they're never like, so when I'm at schools or things like this, like, I couldn't care less about that stuff for the most part. But at the same time, I'm super aware of, like, especially like nice brand new built places where you're like, dude, if the builder of this site finds us, like, they will fucking have your head, because like, this is their contract that they're finishing, and you're fucking waxing this pristine thing that they're about to present as like a completed thing, and now it's all fucked up, right? Even though it's not really that fucked up. And Seattle also, like, we get enough weather that like a lot of, you know, waxed things, just the rain will take it all away. This, and especially if you just skated it that one day or whatever. Like, anyways, it's interesting, kind of like all these conversations about like the permission to skate places and the lack thereof, and kind of like, I don't know, I feel like in the guys I run with, or like have been able to skate with for like many years now, like, I feel like are pretty on, they're with it enough to see when like maybe it's not the time to wax. Like, don't get caught waxing the same way you're kind of like, yeah, it's just it's a form of vandalism. So you kind of know that there's some harm there and some foul, but like, it's interesting to roll up in a group and kind of be like the one in the group who feels too anxious about all of it and like doesn't want us to hop the fence right then. Or I'm like, yo, like, just chill for a second. That person is definitely a super citizen. They will be on the phone with cops. So if we can just like not do this in front of them for a moment, this will be better. But then you maybe go around in groups that sometimes have people who are just like treating a place just completely like a skate park, where it's just like, why would I consider like the family that's here, like at this park or at this whatever place, or like the owner of this business, and I'm just like in the front of their place, like smearing wax all over their shit. You know, it's like I but at the same time, like, especially being as a filmer, it's like I'm down as fuck, and so I'm down to like be like, okay, well, you go do that and I'll be like ready over here, let's do this. But then I'm also like, yo, we need to leave, like, when that time kind of pops up, you know. It's like this interesting little dance that is not just with security guards, but kind of just with people. That's like, it's, I don't know, it's fun and not fun, but it's just a weird experience to be a part of.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about like the level of I guess engagement that you have with what's going on around you out in the streets, and you know, being able to like gauge your periphery, being able to like really understand what is happening here, like around what we're doing right now, and protect your endeavor, protect your intent to go and skate, to go get the clips, to do a successful move, no one get hurt, no one wind up in some fucking weird like bullshit situation. And yeah, as you're saying, it's kind of like this quite careful dance of observation, of that we're a team. Also, we're kind of in this together. We've got to hold each other down, even if you're rolling with somebody quite belligerent or somebody who doesn't quite consider some of those things. You're almost having to have an extra ear and eye open for that person, and just sort of making sure that the whole situation just doesn't go down too irresponsibly and just too just like, you know, affecting other people overtly. It's like people are going to have their views and opinions about what you're doing. And, you know, for the most part, if I'm out in the streets, I could take it or leave it, what somebody needs to say to me in that moment. If they're going to walk on by, that's fine by me. See you later. However, I guess you've got people who are willing to throw their 2 cents in a little bit more than others, who then want to become part of that situation in whatever way possible, you know. And sometimes we know how that goes down. That's just people like literally. And yeah, security guards is one thing. It's like for the most part, for me, like any security guard coming out is just doing a job, and I'm like, look, cool, it's cool, man. Like literally,
it's hilarious how like vilified the security guard is within skate
wild.
culture, and it's just like, you know, like fuck, man. Like I think that's a fun bit of perspective as you get older and your age gets closer to that of like what a average security guard you might encounter is, and they roll up to you and you're like basically the same age. They are also just kind of working a job that whether they like it or not, they're just sort of there, and they're just like having to tell you this so that they don't get fired. And thinking about the droves of like sweatpants young kids being like, I mean, it's like it all makes sense, but it is laughable to think back on just being like, those are the people I feel least like resentful of, even though it's like, oh my God, like just
no,
can we just do this and we'll be gone, you know? And like some of them are cooler than others, but it for them, it makes way more sense to me, as opposed to like your random passerby who like has fuck all to do with anything there, and they're like, I'm from the other side of town, like I have a feeling this isn't supposed to be happening. And you're like, well, I have a feeling it has nothing to do with you, so fuck off. Like
I've got a feeling you need to just kind of move on and get on with your day, and that's it.
And I'm pretty sure it will do nothing to you if you stay here, or if you leave, or if you watch me fall, or if you watch me land this.
And I guess that
is that Lynn? Lynn's just getting back.
Oh,
Slim's
excited.
Going off.
Slim is such a good looking dog.
Oh man, thank you. He's hey, what's up? He's a handsome boy.
He is a handsome boy. Every time you post a picture, and you guys are kind of a dog crew almost. I mean, I see a lot of dogs in the footage with you guys, and it's always cute to see the dogs getting on well together. And what up, Slim?
He's gonna come stick to me. He likes to just kind of lean on people. We have a few dogs in the crew of people. I definitely just have always enjoyed dogs. I think my grandpa had like labs, like 4 or 5 of them. Yeah, most times that I can remember seeing him. So I feel like that was kind of like a.
And Slim's a lab, rather. He's a lab. Or is he a retriever?
Kind of. He's a golden retriever and Bernese mountain dog mix.
And a Bernese mountain dog mix.
But he just looks like a black golden retriever, basically, like a bigger head.
Yeah. He's a cutie. And he stayed so polite throughout this conversation so far.
He's in his chill mode right now. He's like a total dingus in different settings, you know, like if this were outdoors with any kind of squirrels or cats or other dogs around, we'd be in a different boat. But yeah, he's a good guy though. He's pretty chill at home.
You roll with Slim pretty much when you go out skating, right? Like you'll take Slim out skating pretty much the whole time.
Like kind of 50-50, I'd say. I guess it depends. It depends on if I know that we're going to go somewhere that's like we were talking about, like security concerns, kind of like if I know that I have to be like with my gear, like ready to grab and run, it's Slim will run away if I let him off leash. He just will like be fucking gone. Like the first time we went out skating with him, he comes out a fair bit, but he's also not the skate dog I was envisioning when we got a dog. The first day I took him out skating, we were in the back of like just a school that we've gone through the years, and we went in this loading dock area in the back, and I think we had Sean Keen was in town, I'm pretty sure. That same day, yeah, Sean was there, I think, for the first time Slim was like in the skate car, and like moment one out the door, first spot where Sean did that, like he and I made an edit, and he does like he calls them like an MJ slide, like the double toe slide on like a plastic bench. That was like day one out with him, first spot out with Slim, and out the box, he gets out the car and starts like chomping a dead squirrel or bird of some kind that had maggots in it. And like,
Jesus.
Or I guess he didn't chomp it. He rolled his body into it. Like he like rolled his head on it, and like, it was so gross. And then that same day, so we ended up giving him kind of a bath and like some part of this Puget Sound nearby after that. But then like that same day, we were toying around with him in the back of this school, and then Sam Askin was like kind of like playing with him and throwing a ball for him. And then I was like, let's let him off leash. And I think we had him for like less than a week at that point, maybe a little more, but everyone's like, yeah, like he's a good boy, and he's just kind of like tussling with everybody. He's off leash, and then there's just like this moment where he realizes he's off leash, and he looks at all of us and like sticks his tongue out to the side and just takes off and just like runs through this alley. And then he's like on this busy street, and we're chasing him for like the better part of probably 45 minutes, I'd say.
Oh my God.
He's like, all of us are almost getting hit by cars, including him, like pretty often, because it's like the time of night where like he's a black dog.
Yeah,
I don't think any of us were on skates at that point, but yeah, it's just kind of like, it's that funny twilight where like I feel like a lot of cars were totally not, and we're like running very erratically around. So we, that's the first time Slim's gotten off leash, and a few other skate boys have been around for other times that he's gotten off leash, or barked at dogs a little too aggressively.
Would it still be a problem? Would it still be a problem if he was off leash now? Would he?
Oh, fuck yeah, yeah. No, he's not. He unless we're like in a gated area. Yeah, he's like laying down, and Lynn's like rubbing his hand right now. But he's very sweet. He's great, but we can't trust him. He got off leash at Lynn's family's house for Christmas a few years ago and killed a neighbor's chicken, and we had to like like right before everyone got there for like Christmas Eve like gathering.
Darkness.
Yeah, there's just like a few times. I think we're at like 7 or 8 times now where he's gotten out, and like maybe just a few of them, like the chicken's probably the worst for him.
Yeah, I mean that's
he's a good skate dog, and he's much better now than when he first started coming out. There would be times where like I feel like my friend Geoff Phillip probably got it the worst, because we were just like really training him at that point. Slim, I mean. And there was one time that, yeah, like I remember Jeff was trying to do this trick, and he just fully had to fold it because Slim was driving him fucking nuts. Because it was like every car, every person that was like, and it was like when he was in that, like, I'm gonna jump on, and Slim's barking, and I'm like on the rail, I'm sliding, and Slim's like shouting at some, but it's just like, it's the just total puppy. We got him as like a 1-year-old, so he's grown, but he's like a total dingus.
I mean,
I love him. He's great, but yeah.
There's a couple of dogs who I've ended up being like particularly close with. I love dogs. I'm on the fence at the moment. I mean, it's these sorts of stories that, oh my God, I don't want to deal with a fucking murderer, and I definitely don't want to deal with this dog like putting its head in like maggoty fucking corpses. That's a goddamn nightmare.
Yeah.
But like
We just recently had to pry shit out of his mouth, frozen shit, like
No,
it snowed.
man.
I think
No,
I've had to pull poop
dude.
out of his mouth like
No, dude.
maybe close to 10 times, and like
Nah, dude.
really, and
Nah.
like hard and soft. So think about the two.
Nah,
I mean,
dude.
soft is like, you got it, man. Fuck, let's get you water.
Jesus
But
fucking Christ.
yeah, they're both bad. So he's a great dog, but yeah, there's a mixed bag of like, he's not like an easy skate dog to have out. Like Dustin Spangler, he has two amazing dogs. I mean, Slim's a great dog too, but yeah, he has two great dogs, like border collies, Australian
right?
Shepherd kind of dogs. I think Blue's a mix and Ruby's all Aussie, but they're like, they're off leash. They come and go. They stay with the pack. They stay with us, and they're not going to go fight other dogs, generally speaking.
That's a nightmare.
So Slim is like, if I'm filming and I've tethered him up, I need to be like 1000% that it's like a strong hold, like something that's not going to come loose. It needs to be far enough away from traffic. I thought it was far enough. Once he was tethered up and Sam did this move, and we were waiting for a motorcycle to go through kind of our runway. We were like, okay, you going by. Slim like jumped and almost got his head under this motorcycle as it rolled by, trying to like bite the tire or whatever. He's like a total dummy, but we always joke that he's very sweet, but he's not very smart, and he needs a lot of help, and sometimes that's not very fun to bring out to the skate session.
I think I've got the picture. He is a sweet, good-looking dog, but eating shit needs to stop. That needs to stop. I could not deal with that. If my dog had a penchant for eating shit, or not eating it, but just it's got some kind of like attraction to it, that is such a nightmare. I mean, I was gonna say, like, I've had a few dogs that I've been quite close with. So Steve Gas Station, one of the dogs that I ended up. I mean, everybody obviously.
He's a great skate dog. He can hang the fuck out,
chilling,
and yeah, and Slim not the same. Like, you got to be like, is there, like, just the other day there was like, so like, it's like, if I bring Slim out, I kind of need to have an idea of like, I'm not guaranteed going to like a leveled construction site where we're kind of like breaking and entering, or like certain things like that, or like if we have to hop a fence, that's an issue. Like there's things like that like, knowing if Slim's on the skate day, there's certain places like I might kind of guide or not want to go.
Definitely.
Particularly like, fast paced, like a downtown, like you only get a few tries to do this thing. It's like, we can't, unless someone's there to hold him, which usually we have enough people to have somebody watch after the boy.
I mean, that speaks to, some of the high intense dramatic moments that go down when you're out skating, and actually having a slightly temperamental, dog
toddler
with you, a toddler, essentially, because you care for Slim like a child, like he's yours.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he is yours. He's your fucking dog. So you're gonna like basically run after him in traffic and nearly get run over, like trying to spare his life. So having that kind of stress on top of the stress of watching a Jeff Phillip, who seems to me quite a highly strung, quite intense character, and obviously if the barking is going on in the background and he's just like, fuck this, I can't do this anymore, then that's another consideration on top of that. And as I said, I've had a few dogs who I ended up close with, who come out on tours, who were completely chill in the van, who just come out, sat down next to the spot, watched everyone do their thing, got back in the van, and were cool with eating out of cut plastic bottles or drinking out of just whatever shit that that they could drink from. Mark's dog, Mark Moreno's dog,
he has like a husky, right? Or like a Malamute of some kind,
something like that. I don't know the exact breed. I'm not very good with dog breeds, but basically
it's a wolf looking dog.
It's a motherfucking wolf. It's a wolf. So he has a horror story, and he has a few horror stories with Brandon, but where he lives in Barcelona, in the region of Barcelona that he lives in, there are a lot of wild pigs, and and these wild pigs are gnarly. Then they're not cool. They've got big teeth, big tusks. They're fierce and they're savages, basically. And you know, Brandon being the wolf that he is, he's got these instincts that kick in, where he's looking at, you know, like hunting or killing or attacking these things. But, you know, ultimately he's a wolf on one side of things, but on the other side of things, he's like a dog. He's a house dog, you know, and he's not a house dog. You get what I'm saying? I mean, he's a pet.
Yeah.
So he's got his instincts, but he's also a pet. And he's done a runner on Mark when he's been up in the hills where he lives, chasing after these fucking pigs on a couple of occasions. I mean, I've heard some really terrifying stories of Brandon running off after these pigs, and then they have to go chasing him in the woods trying to find, you know, nightmare.
That sounds so shit. Like, fuck.
Super stressful. And I mean, kind of similar to this thing of you chasing him down a road when he's done a runner. And then I've looked after Brandon with some of the homies. When Mark got married, we looked after the dog in an apartment in this other place in Spain where Mark got married. So then I was looking after the dog with some of the homies who were staying in this apartment. So this is the first time I ever took out a dog for a walk. Like, I'd never taken a dog out for a walk, like on my own. That wasn't even a thing for me. So like trying to stop Brandon from attacking other dogs was fucked up, man, because he's huge. He's like a wolf. He's so powerful.
Yeah.
I was having
he looks like he's almost 100 pounds maybe, or I don't know.
He's huge.
But either way, he's strong. He looks strong as fuck. I mean, he's like strong. You said, it's a certain size that just like
they get growling. He's showing his teeth, like growling at dogs like this big. I always just always, you know, just remember that kind of, oh, could I own a dog? Could I do this? You know, and I just, you know, when I see guys with their skate dogs on the crew, I always go, these guys love their dogs. I wonder how, like, whether that's stressful or not, or, you know, whether these dogs are chill, like Steve. You know, my comparison is Steve. Are these dogs as chill as Steve?
Steve seems like far and away like one of the best. He's probably like the top tier skate dog you could own.
He's probably the skate dog. I mean, yeah. I don't know if there could be another dog that sort of matches the, you know, how intrepid Steve was. He got on planes and shit. You know, he's in different continents. He had pro products. You know, he had t-shirts, wheels. He was well chilled as well, like really cool. And then if he needed to hold it down and get a little bit shirty, a little bit aggressive, he would do that too. You know, so I could talk about these beautiful pups till the cows come home, but I mean, I reckon I should probably ask you a few things about how it is that you got to picking up cameras and how it is that you eventually got to making you know, these touching and familiar and spectacular skate videos that you ended up producing. And I did a bit of a deep dive, you know, with you on your Vimeo channel and your sort of weird YouTube channel, which like has you've got like 3 uploads on your YouTube channel. Like there's a Carter LeBlanc YouTube channel.
Is one of them a Chad Hornish thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yo, I forgot that was anywhere. It's like the really stupid like hill bomb.
There's the hill bomb one. Yeah. And then
that was just a full goof, like when with iMovie, like the first week, Chad and I were toying around with like my first camera. I forgot that was online.
So that, yeah, you've got 3 videos, I think, on your YouTube, and your YouTube channel, there's like a fairly updated picture of yourself as like the profile picture for your YouTube channel.
I think it's linked to my Google or something. So it's kind of like, I feel like a lot of the things I'll do through Gmail corresponds with YouTube, and like that sort of like, I think. And then I think mostly just my YouTube is like, I'll be logged in through it and, you know, like things, like put up like a like button on a, you know, a certain video just for whatever, but I don't really use the YouTube channel much. But that's, damn, I gotta shout out Chad, miss you.
No doubt. I mean,
that's funny.
Because I just, you know, I looked at all 3 of those uploads, and it was just making me laugh because there was another one where it's just like you and a homie who's just like skating a bowl, and it's kind of starting to rain, and it's just kind of, they were just super random. Because I was like, are these your first videos? Were they your first videos? Like that?
I'm gonna just kind of like attempt to find them real quick, because for sure the Chad one, the Chad one was like weird chat that okay, I'm a little lost because I haven't, it's fun to think about this, but yeah, so Chad is like, in essence, probably the biggest reason why like I ended up being able to get a camera or like wanted one or, you know, that kind of thing.
Wow. Okay.
Chad moved to town for like a short period of time for like a summer in like 2011, I think it was, or maybe it was 10. And at that point, nobody was filming a ton out here. My buddy Gavin was, I think he's still, no, he had lost his camera, had it
Gavin
stolen.
Fitch?
Yep. And his camera had been stolen. People had it was one of those periods of a lull, like we had talked about earlier, where like, you know, a lot of people are just kind of falling away from skating a little bit. And Chad moved to town, and JT and I had been trying to film with our buddy Preston, and Preston had a GL1, and we were like we had filmed some tricks on it. So we were like trying, because it was like we were excited to skate. We were watching skate edits and feeling like, you know, we're not amazing, but we have some moves that would be worth filming. And it's kind of like, until we had like a reason to sort of like put on for something, it felt like there was that place where you're like, I know I could go do, okay, wow, these are the other ones are cell phone clips in a bowl in Massachusetts. Like, Jesus, I forgot that's crazy. But so yeah, like Chad's mom had moved out here and was seeing a man who like, very oddly enough, he worked in the video industry filming like weddings and school performances and things. And as it turns out, like the guy fucking filmed like my high school graduation and filmed like most of my school's like dance recitals and kind of like performances and things. Just very weird little tidbit. But so he had all these cameras, and he was like, do you guys want to borrow a camera? Because I was like hanging out with Chad all the time. We were at his place. We were talking about like what we were going to get or when. And he was like, I have cameras. You guys can borrow one. And then it was like, fuck. And so then it was like tiny little like HDV something Sony transition from HD to, or from SD to HD, kind of like, it was an HD camera, but it was kind of like early versions of it. Bad zoom trigger. But, you know, I think it was like a $50 fisheye Opteka you can buy, like baby death. And then you have like a skate camera. And then like building like it's all jokes because I've like made too many things with like hot glue and duct tape and like these kinds of materials. And so like made like a weight to put like a box full of like bolts and whatever weighted metal things, and then like finished with like cardboard and kind of like probably like electrical tape. So like this like weight that gets hot shoe mount or tripod mounted underneath. So it's this like got a weight because it's like the weight of a wallet, this like tiny camera.
Yeah.
So you add on weights to make it like feel and kind of react like an actual camera.
Right.
And yeah, that was the first camera I was able to get.
So Chad's
I borrowed it.
Chad's mum's boyfriend, who inadvertently had filmed your high school what is it?
He was
prom,
like proms, these kinds of things. Yeah, it's just a weird tidbit. But
he had access to cameras, and by way of you hanging out with Chad, you guys got access to cameras. That was the first point that you had access to cameras. Was this sort of what is this, 2005, 6 or something?
2011. So I had had other friends who had owned cameras and had kind of grown up like skating with people who were like gathering footage to eventually make some kind of an edit. Some of them made like videos, some of them like section format kind of videos, you know, like 5 parts a video, like full length versus, you know, like maybe like just montage, collecting for montages and stuff. But most of those friends were like sort of into like I've always enjoyed like painting, drawing, printmaking, those kinds of visual arts. But the friends that I had who owned cameras or did that sort of thing, I feel like there was like this I get it, like hesitancy to give someone who didn't, it was like this barrier of entry where you're like, you have to know what you're doing to learn what you're doing. Or like, what am I saying? Like you,
I understand.
like you need ID to get ID kind of a thing. So it was like, fuck, how do I learn how to film if you don't just give me a chance to like hold this camera? So I was around cameras enough, but didn't have any interest really in learning, but then also like wasn't given a chance much to hold the cameras. So it was just like a not like I knew I enjoyed seeing all of our friends get clips, and like I enjoyed watching skate videos, and I liked that whole process. Like I feel like I've always kind of run around in like a crew of people that are interested, hanging out, enjoying each other's company, trying to skate some things, but in the background of it always is like wanting to like try to excel on a given day and do something that, you know, you felt like you kind of like achieved a little bit, like
Sure,
even if it's just like a really small, like that felt really good, or that was a cool little thing. But like, yeah, I feel like nowadays it's more directly stated, or directly like it's more in the forefront of just like, at some point we're going to make something real. So each time we go out, like we're like looking for things to like with an end goal of like them going to an edit or a part or a thing, you know. But
so you were quite late to the party, it seems, when it comes to actually seeing yourself on footage and wanting to capture your immediate like people around you skating, because 2011, right? Like that's
yeah,
that's way into your skating at this point.
we had like a few little edits that would probably still be living on that friend from grade school I mentioned,
Tyler. Tim.
Tyler's another one too. But yeah, like just a few of these people who like, and a few of the edits I could probably still dig up, but they would, you know, it'd be like kind of like at that point I probably had only seen myself do like a back royale on film on like a few different things. It was like very few things, not much thought behind them, just kind of getting a thing as you find them. Much like the process now, but not like nothing nearly as intentional as we are now, with kind of like, okay, let's try to get this kind of a thing, and then like I'm in the back of my mind, I'm looking for this sort of object now, or like when it comes along, I'm like, oh fuck, we have these things, this will be great to get this. So yeah, it's kind of like the filming process back then was very like, I just was oblivious to it. Like it was happening for some people, but I wasn't really a part of it. I was around it, but I wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you're something's right there next to you and you're just like, I don't know, picking your nose, zoning off in the opposite direction, and there's this cool thing happening right there. And I liked the edits my friends would make and all this stuff, but it just like, it didn't occur to me that like I could decide to make them too if I wanted. And I guess it took like everyone kind of dwindling and falling away from it for there to be this void where it was like, no one's making this shit. If I don't just force myself to learn this, like we're probably not gonna have anything get made, or like just or just like have this reason to want to try a little bit, you know.
So that was sort of, you know, when you talk about filling a void, and we've spoken a little bit about those lulls where people fell away, and actually then it leaves you needing to fill some kind of void to carry or to continue skating on within your group, to, I suppose, reflect back on it and to like start putting videos together would be a real clear motivation. Because I mean, when I first saw footage of myself skating back, I do remember thinking that's kind of cool. Like, I don't think I'm not going to want to do that actually anymore, and I definitely want to see what other people's skating is going to look like, given a certain angle that I might film it from, or if I'm copying certain angles that I've seen that I think work really, really nicely, or make skating just look dope from like some of the videos that I've seen. Like that's something that I wanted to emulate pretty early doors, and I hadn't really gotten close to being a good skater really. I had a camera in my hands before I was really a good skater at all. So in a way, it kind of makes sense to hear that you sort of come later to the party, spent a lot of time skating without even being invested in what you look like skating. You seems like you developed a lot of your techniques and your style, to the point where you first had a camera in your hands? Did you have like an evolved kind of or so you first started filming with this borrowed camera from Chad's mum's partner. At what point did that sort of start, I don't know, like getting quite intense? Like you had your designs on your own camera at that point? This is an HD, well, sorry, what kind of camera?
It was, yeah, I think it was HD, but it was at a kind of like the way that the HVX is HD, but it's at that crossing over point where like technology was trying to like drop SD altogether. And so it was like this, it was HD, but I think the resolution is such that it's like closer to the look of an SD camera, if that makes any sense.
So, definitely.
But yeah, so it was like we were filming just like the spring, like that. So Chad arrived in like early spring or summer, maybe, probably just a month or two before he arrived. JT and I were beginning to film with that friend Preston, with his GL1 from like many years before. But it just like I think the real thing is we had like an MK2 on it, and that just like was a really not a great fisheye for that camera. And so it made like feel like we weren't good enough to use the tools we had, but also like the tools we had were not that good. And so like even when we felt like we were doing it, or we did kind of do it right or good-ish, it just was like kind of there was like sort of a square and a circle peg kind of feeling to like that filming. And actually, like, I don't even think we ever imported the tapes we filmed. Like we didn't even have a computer to really be like putting the stuff anywhere. So we had like, maybe like 30 tricks between the three of us filmed, and we're just kind of like, what do we do with this? Then Chad shows up, we become fast friends. And then really, and like at that point, I think I knew I wanted a VX. That was what friends like Tyler and Gavin had used in the past. So I had, and at the time it was more of a skate, like that was one of the bigger cameras being used, at least within skateboarding at that moment. It was well established. And I just like, I was like knowing that I liked the way my friends' footage looked like, wanting something that I knew would work about as well. And then seeing it in certain videos where I'm like, can I get that? And then finding out what I need to buy. So it's like, you need a VX1 or a 21, and you need an MK1. And at that point you're like, well, I need 2,000-ish bucks. And at that point I was like 19, I think 18. No, I guess it was closer to like 20 or 21. And I guess it would have been 21. Anyways, just like not having that amount of cash on hand at the moment was kind of just like, fuck, how am I going to get this VX? Like, so then this like little shitty HD camera plops into being able to dink around with it. So I feel like it allowed me to see if I wanted to keep trying to film. And like Chad and I made an edit that summer, and JT and I made an edit. Gavin and I were filming a little bit of each other with no intended place for the footage to go. I probably got a few clips of Preston that summer. We had some like, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I know of Gavin, and obviously I know of him via your films, and he's an awesome skater. I assume that he held the camera quite a bit for some of the Chance of Rain videos. He already had a VX 1000. So did he have a good definition on what he was doing with that camera prior to you even holding a camera in the first place? Like, would you guys talk about what you thought skating could look like, or whether your crew or your group of friends, could start like putting your skating together in this like format of VX, maybe given some of the skateboarding or other inline stuff that you had seen that used that equipment? Was that a thing that you spoke about with Gavin?
Yeah, I feel like it just like it things would just come up naturally as you're around someone that you spend tons of time with. So Gavin was like maybe 5 years younger than me. I don't know what the spread is, but maybe it's a little more than that, but younger enough that like when we were quite young, he would have been like a really tiny kid as I was like a teenager. And then as we got older, the age gap closed a little bit, and we, you know, we're closer to being like kind of on a like a slightly younger brother would be like kind of the relationship of, you know, as but so it was like Gavin's the younger one who's in high school, not really thrilled about school, but really knowledgeable about cameras and about like at least in terms of like the VX and in terms of like what different skate people like filmmakers would use for their things. And then meanwhile, like I'm in college and have a bit more perspective on some other things than him, but like clueless in the way of like what it is I need or what I'm looking for or like what to look for in footage. And he had like just a wide knowledge of kind of like this lens will give you this look, these cameras kind of give you these colors or this sort of a look. So I mean, but I feel like when we would talk about it, main thing is like I didn't speak the language. I still don't really like to be able to like compare and define what it is that like each camera will do for you. But there are certain things like particularly with fisheye, I feel like, and then just like knowledge of like certain zoom capabilities on cameras are like better or worse for the types of shots that like I like to get. And yeah, but I think Gavin definitely gave me like the broadest like template of how I have learned how to film, which is kind of informed through that friend Tyler as well. Like Gavin learns from Tyler. Tyler's best friends with Derek, who I make the Chance of Rain videos with. And then, you know, it's like this full circle thing where like then later Derek is kind of like the person I'm like learning about what good filming looks like. And he's showing me things that like, he's like, this is a video I really like, you know, so at a certain, hey, one sec, I got somebody calling me. Let me just let them know. I'll back real quick.
We were kind of talking a little bit about some of those early influences in terms of your knowledge of cameras, of VX1000s. That it's a massive outlay to invest in a VX1000, sort of, you know, building up the idea that you wanted to fill that void in terms of some of the people and things that were disappearing out of your group, and essentially take that responsibility yourself to kind of start editing and start filming and editing. Is that like kind of what happened then? Is that sort of what then took place from sort of that 2011 point onwards? You know, how did you do that? Did you set up a channel? Like, I know you've got Vimeo, you've got a YouTube, or was it filming and not knowing what to do with the tapes? And then how did you start getting a more refined kind of product, I suppose, with your filming?
I think at that point, I think Vimeo was pretty established. It was still sort of new for blading to sort of like put all the edits there. I think it was at a time where like maybe YouTube was still, people were still putting things on YouTube, but I think it was at a particular point where like maybe they would get flagged for songs, and Vimeo was a little bit more like free for all. So at that point, you know, I think we just knew by virtue of watching other edits that we could like, you know, you're like, how do I like, do I sign up for Vimeo? Like, oh, you can put this edit there. Okay. So that was like, you can do that. And then you can share it on Facebook, and you can just kind of have it for you and your friends. And then, and then you could put it on BMag at that point, or at least that's where I, you know, so I would make an edit. I mean, I think for first and foremost, it's just like, I think anyone who's a part of the making of it, we make it for our own rewatching and kind of like the time capsule sort of an idea. Which is kind of funny because in some ways, like, I don't end up rewatching a ton of these things a whole lot, my own skating or my own filming. And even though I do like rewatching them, and I will sometimes, but it's funny that the thing that you make for the rewatch value, a lot of times it's like greatest value is just like the act of doing it when you do it, and then just moving on and making another thing. So, but like, yeah, so I think we knew that we could put videos on Vimeo, and we just sort of knew that like the way that we were receiving skate edits just through the grapevine, social media kind of thing, I was like, I just had a hunch where I was like, I don't know. Like I definitely didn't, it was just one of these things where I feel like I've had a number of these where like I just get like a strong interest in a thing that I kind of get obsessed with for a little while. And then like, be it just like a type of art making project. And then that's just like tons and tons of hours. And so like when I started making videos, it was totally a side thing. Like I was like wanting to be a painter and drawer and kind of like sell my artwork and do shows and kind of like just career artist, like wall gallery or wall decorations kind of a person. And and then like I went to school for that kind of thing, and just something with the visual arts world, which I'm still in now, but it's like a big offshoot and not what any of the professors, some of them probably would be down for it, but it's kind of like the thing of like, you're blowing it, you're not painting anymore, and like you only film people and edit now, like that's so whack. But that's like its own, like some people wouldn't have that view, but yeah. So I feel like when I started, I was painting and drawing like if I have 6 hours of free time sort of at the end of a day or whenever to do like creative making things kind of time, it's like, it used to be that maybe like an hour of that time could be like filming, editing, or like editing something or doing that kind of stuff. Or even like, like in the night times, like wanting to stay home to paint. And then now it's more like, if it's a nice night, be like, let's go film, like depending on time of year, who's around. But yeah, slowly it just, the scales tipped to where it was like, I'm like not painting, eventually not painting or drawing at all, like not making any kind of, before the video thing, it's just kind of like always making some piece of artwork with no like real end game, just to keep making stuff. And then it just tips to where it's basically all filming and editing, and there's no more like product set, like I'm not making any products to sell in essence, or to like hang or to like stockpile. And instead I'm just got this massive amount of like footage that I'm labeling and sifting through and editing and playing with songs. And
what were your artistic sort of tendencies like prior to video work? Like you said that you kept yourself pretty busy mainly with painting, but essentially you were pretty concerned with all aspects of art. What were your tendencies? Like what were your urges to kind of express or put to paper or paint?
Mostly I feel like I just like soaked up a lot of like the very like photorealistic depictions. Like Dan Sterling is an amazing artist, love his skating, love his art, but like he's kind of in that tradition of like hyper real, like just like, how did a human make this? Like this isn't a, and where it's like, it's not a photo. I mean, you could know or not know it's a photo, but you're just like, whoa, this looks so much like the real thing. I know what I'm looking at. And I feel like I had like kind of an obsession with that in terms of my art making, like, and I had teachers that kind of encouraged that, where it's sort of like, how much detail can we do? How can we, how good are you at depicting the thing? Like, to liken it to skating, it's kind of like less about like, it was like an obsession with doing everything and being able to do all the tricks instead of like how you do them a little bit. So I feel like early art mind was mostly like trying to like take on the hardest thing to draw, like things like lamps on and like reflective surfaces or weird just difficult things to draw were just fun. And but all this is just like very standard, like what you would soak up in an art 101 class of like, okay, draw a portrait, okay, like draw this still life of things, like it was a very like, just defined, cut and dry kind of like, here are some of the things people make art of, they draw pictures of this stuff. And so I feel like I didn't have any urge or real like thoughts about how to reinvent the wheel. I just enjoyed just making the stuff. And so anyways, to answer the question, I feel like a lot of the art that I would make would be like, I would ruin it because I would just work on it for too long. and like I would have this like kind of like
complex.
Yeah, it would just be, and which I as I think about it now, I'm kind of like, yeah, some of that to some extent is probably how my video making process goes too, where you're like, I've edited this for countless hours now. It's looked right for months. When is it going to look more right? Like, just put it out, you know? So I feel like a lot of edits end up that way for me, where it's kind of like I've moved the puzzle pieces so many times to so many places to see how it all goes and to like see how it works and try to fit something in here and make this part of the song like really give some like activate the clips so that they like are better than like there's something that's like working with a song or with other clips next to one another kind of thing. So I feel like, I don't know, the art making process definitely was just like meticulous and just kind of like just lots and lots of hours, just make a million things, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, you're already in that space where you're willing to dedicate hours on end to a process.
Totally.
And there's a degree of commitment and being meticulous and shifting those puzzle pieces around with video editing in terms of when it slots together and just affects you in your mind that works and that's correct. It's actually really interesting that you raised firstly Dan Sterling, which is really interesting in that I'm actually going to speak with him next week on Sunday.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, he's a really good pal of mine, but we'd literally been talking this morning.
Yeah, just massive like Grom fan of just his skating is so fantastic. Everything from just any clip I've ever seen of him, I can't think of one I didn't enjoy. But yeah, finding out that he was like this fantastic, you know, visual artist is like, what the fuck? It reminds me, I still like would like to buy a print from him at some point. But he makes cool stuff.
He does make cool stuff. His artwork is hyper real and it's just stunning and almost breathtaking in its detail. But it's just interesting what you were saying that you know, your kind of tendencies were towards that kind of hyper real style of painting or drawing. Then when I think about you know, like the standard definition, like VX quality footage in relationship to your HVX and your other more cinematic, more current contemporary kind of HD cameras that are being used right now, there's this sort of like almost like degraded and less detailed and more like kind of melding hues going on in the actual image. So from a sort of meticulous hyperreal sort of tendency with your artwork, and then you sort of, you know, the choice of equipment for your visual artwork is kind of the, well, if you were to say, well, it's not hyper real, you know, the VX footage, it's anything but. It says a lot of other things, feelings. It's sort of like it provokes lots of feelings. Do you think you could put your finger on what it is about the VX1000 and its colors or its zoom quality, or what is it that is so appealing to work with that kind of equipment for skating?
Yeah, so you're I feel like you're I think at some point it occurred to me kind of what you're touching on, but definitely it's been made more clear to me as time goes on. So like the hyperreal obsession was kind of like early art intrigue, and then probably like later in like high school, or I guess it would have been more like college age, like seeing art, learning about some in like art classes, that kind of thing. More of an interest, like kind of just getting bored with that hyperreal image, and then really geeking out on like abstract art and just everything that comes with like learning the rules and then breaking them, and kind of just not being obsessed with like the crystal clear everything. I mean, there's like a direct relation that we're likening to camera stuff, but also just in the way of like being cool with like a looseness or vague quality to images, that like you're saying, like, I mean, it's like just a classic art discussion of like, are you more interested in technology? Are you more interested in like feelings? Are you more interested in like a conversation or in like a statement, or I mean everything's a statement, right? But are you like, what's your aim with like the art you're making? Are you trying to like let people know about a certain thing, or are you just like making it as an escape, or as like a like there's all these different ways to make art for all these different reasons. But I feel like finding those kind of like abstract art, like stumbling into some of the like ways that people would go about making their art, or the kinds of images they would make, and then trying to do some of that myself with like visual art. Like when I was picking up filming, I was just making like big like ink paintings that, so I always thought about them like like I was looking at a lot of like Ralph Steadman, who does like the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas artwork. So just like splotty, kind of scratchy, loose, rough, gestural kind of stuff, mixed with like looking at lots of Japanese and Chinese and Korean like ink paintings and landscapes. So eventually kind of just pulling those mixed with like kind of free association drawings, and then from there kind of arriving at this just like I mean, they just look sort of like calligraphy, landscape, abstract, no image, you know, yeah, kind of like looking at clouds, where, you know, you might have people see different things that they distinctly see in a thing, but it's all just really like finding some mixture of movements that feels nice. Like it kind of filled the void. I was skating a lot when I was making those, and it filled the void of like what skating feels like to me sometimes, where like it feels really good to do certain movements just because of the way they just kind of feel as you do them. So like finding that kind of way of making art eventually was awesome. And I still think that if I were to try to make something today, I would still go down that hole, as opposed to being like, let me look at this thing for like hours and try to make it look here like it looks there. Like even if I did that thing now, I feel like I'd go about it really differently. But yeah, it's funny that interest bleeds into like not being very concerned with the hyperreal image within skating. But to that end too, it's like I still like am such a dummy, because it's like I'm still finding the best ways to export things, and I still don't have it. And I still like, you know, we'll see VX footage on Thrasher or on different skateboarding channels, and you're like,
how did they get
this
that
looks
in?
so much better. Like, yeah. So, and some of that comes with learning about how to set up the camera, and then some of it comes with like how to export, and then some of it comes with like the NTSC versus PAL stuff of like in the UK. Like for instance, when I talk with John about filming, some of the advice he's kind of like, they're just sort of like sharing knowledge about how to export. It's like it's a different thing in the UK than it is in America, because of the two formats of television that they had when the cameras were being made, which I don't even know if that's still a thing. I guess it's all like a rectangle HD format now, I think. But anyways, yeah, I still have simultaneously like a lack of interest in the hyperreal image, and then also like you don't want a blurry fucked up thing, so you want something that's like looks good. But I think that's like a long lead into just the VX mic is probably the image with the sounds, and part of the image is like yeah, I came to think about it like a painting and a drawing thing, where it's like if Dan Sterling's drawing is like something in 4K, I kind of want more of like a charcoal sketch that's like suggesting shapes and things where like some of it is maybe blended together, or like shadows blend into something that not describing it well. But yeah, the difference between like just a photograph of a thing versus like a drawing that's maybe not fully defined for you. So it's kind of like, and again, it's like I want to see what I'm watching in the skate, in like when I film a thing or when people film me or whatever. But it's like that something about the types of colors you get, the color of concrete that you can get with VXs, and particularly like when there's orange or yellow trees in the backgrounds of clips, you know, I feel like I just
well, speaking to that, I guess one of the composite images that I get when I think about the Pacific Northwest and some of the footage that I really, I mean, obviously that's your footage at this point in time that, you know, is really from that region that I'm connected to. But I always think about the sort of the wetness, the dampness, the lushness of what it appears as. The autumnal colors is a huge thing. And then you just mentioned the kind of concrete, which for me is something very distinct about that particular area. And it's very distinct about the kinds of skate spots. It's kind of that like rough, gravelly, almost prehistoric looking type of concrete, as you say, can get worn off in terms of the wax. But do you know what I'm saying with the little, almost little stones within the concrete, that kind of concrete? And
it's so funny to look at concrete from different places like that, where you're kind of like, this is the climate, this is the concrete they made for you because they knew it would get this cold or this hot. And then over time, it's like, this is kind of what your city's concrete. There's like, you know, several types in each city. But yeah, it's funny noticing that stuff of like I feel like in London, when I can think of the footage out there, I mean, I guess there's like the very new, very smooth. I mean, it's in every place where like you have the brand newest concrete, and it hasn't had any time to see weather or seasons or just time. So it's like, but it's like a better, it's a finer mix of stones. You know what I mean? Like you're pointing out the concretes that have the actual like big stones within the whole mix as like the filler. So as it gets all like eroded, you finally see the big stones within just like the seemingly just like smooth concrete, or you know.
You often see that kind of stuff by the seaside with us. So like you're not going to really see that kind of concrete in London City, although you could say a composite of London might be bricks on the floor or like cobbles, that kind of thing. It's like a composite. It's not, you know, it's like a takeaway, and one of my main takeaways are those textures and those hues that come through, and it's just something I really associate with the Pacific Northwest. And even like that Portland footage from back in the day, is those exact same types of ledges that I've always like, oh, that's what they skate down there. It must be really rough, you know, but it also must be, once you've got a well worn in ledge, it's never not waxed, and it will always give you something. And it's
Portland
just
and Seattle are really similar for like just all the I mean, we're like I said, we were like 3 hours away from each other, but part of that is just like, I feel like all the seasons are essentially the same. And you know, like the look of spots is almost the same. Like to I feel, I mean, I always kind of wondered, like, to an outside eye, but like to me, when I think about like trying to look at the footage and attempt to be objective, it's kind of like, oh, I'll put it this way: when I watch like skateboard edits from crews that are around here, unless I know a thing is in Portland or like Oregon or somewhere like neighboring Washington, unless I know from being there or from like just grapevine, like, oh, that's a spot that's in like this part of Southern Oregon or whatever. There's a lot of times where you're like, is that Washington or is that Oregon? Just because they're so closely like situated, and the climates are so similar, but also the building style of things and just kind of like the concrete that gets laid is very similar. So it's Oregon's awesome. Portland's really great to skate. It's, one of those places I've been enough times, but not, or I've like enjoyed my time there, but it's always like, you know, that there's a lot of things to find there, and it's like that mixed desire of like wanting to keep finding out what's here, but also being like, oh, there's like, with more time and money, the boys and I would all enjoy going to Portland a lot more than we do now, but it's cool.
I don't doubt that. And you know, you've got like this quite damp, lush region, the climate that you live in. Obviously, you know, you end up forming, well, I suppose, you know, I mean, you've got the tattoo on your arm, that's Chance of Rain. Chance of Rain almost is a group of you guys. It's like a crew almost, but it's also a succession of video projects. Could you say something about how Chance of Rain formed? Like, how did that come together? I suppose the title is self-evident. I live in Britain, so there's always the chance of rain. But Yeah, how did that sort of come about? I mean, I'm still got this like point of sort of 2010, 11, where you'd been skating for some time, started having cameras in your hands, started working with cameras. And so, when does Chance of Rain actually come about?
Pretty shortly after. Yeah, so I guess well, okay, I'll start at the beginning. It's filming with Chad and JT, just being like, let's just make like an edit this summer, whether it's like a montage of the three of us or if it's parts, let's just try to make a thing. And then it becomes clear that like, okay, JT's like always been amazing, but it's like he's a powerhouse, he's going to get a ton of footage, he'll have a part. And then that's an online part. Chad is like re-emerging into skating, not sure if he can really still do it, but like is amazing. And so he comes back quickly and it's like, fuck, okay, so Chad's gonna have a part. I was still more interested in filming than really skating. So I got some good clips that summer that just never did anything with. But Gavin also got some good clips, but both of us were kind of like, this isn't really like us having like 3 random clips in some summer montage that we could have made between the 4 or 5 of us wasn't really what we wanted. It just like wasn't a satisfying project to want to put out, or to it's just like the art that you publish or like the album you would put out, you're just like, this isn't it yet. So we put out JT and Chad's things. They're great. Kind of caught the filming urge there. And began to kind of understand like how the process all goes of like collecting footage and then like kind of curating it and doing stuff with it later, and just basic editing stuff. But that whole time I felt like okay, so I had to eventually give that camera back to Chad's mom's boyfriend. And right around that time though, it was pretty seamless for like saving up enough money to be able to buy a camera and a lens. And then Derek, who the sort of like, I guess, co-author, co-creator of sort of like the masterminds behind it, like Gavin. So Gavin had been out of doing things for a while when he had his camera stolen, and then was just so like defeated about really trying to go again, because it was also just like he didn't have a ton of money. It was like a series of kind of like gifts that he got from his parents as he was, it's like the kind of thing of like, it took him like 5 years to trade and sell and like barter between like other camera setups to get to where he got with like a VX21 and MK1, all this stuff. So I think it was just like kind of heartbreaking to have it stolen, and he wasn't working a job really. So he was just kind of in that point where he's like still living at home, doesn't have enough money to just go start again, and was just sort of defeated. So it felt like Chance of Rain, what I'm really getting is like the whole concept was just, let's give us a reason to try. So let's just say we're going to make a video. And it was kind of like, I'm like blanking on sort of the reference I want to mention, but just kind of like my buddy Ian Walker and I joke about like tricking people into filming parts by like, just kind of like, cause we've done it to each other on like different trips where like one of us went to the other place thinking like, oh dude, we've done it both ways. Like we're like, I go being like, dude, I'm gonna get just a few clips of Walker, and then we're gonna like wrangle a part, like a vacation part out of him. And then I end up getting more footage, and then he's like doubled it back on me, and then I end up skating well and getting a bunch of footage or something. But so it was kind of like we didn't have that name at its origins. We just knew we wanted to make a video where like we each had not had much media of ourselves put out, and we were always almost in like an edit or almost in a video, or like the project didn't get finished. Like JT has had like maybe 2 or 3 amazing parts that would still probably have a lot of like relevance today. It's kind of crazy because a lot of that footage, you'd watch it and be like, oh, he did that like within the last year or 2, because of how like sort of like ahead of his time the skating would have been in terms of like an eye for style, spot selection, trick choice, like things that like would have been he was very like atypical of the skater that you would see in like 2006, 5 and before. or just like a little, like he could do traditional things, but would be like a little off the beaten path and find weirder ways. So it's kind of like, we all just had an almost experience with getting into like some kind of a video. And Gavin had made some that he just wasn't like, they were just early videos and he was learning how to film and he wasn't that great at it. And we were all just kids kind of. And so there was just this collective feeling of like, we've never actually got on the fucking boat. Like we've never gotten to fucking like enjoy this party that could be like skating spots that you maybe didn't think you could ever skate, being out with your friends, collecting and curating it in a way where like you put it into this product for you and for other people to watch, where it's kind of this just collection of skating moments, you know. And I mean, it's just that's what a skate video is in essence, right? It's nothing new we were trying to do, but we just wanted, I think we knew that we liked skating enough and all of us were good enough to just be like, I can do some things, but also I haven't pushed myself to try to go there. And I haven't had a reason because I haven't had like, I don't know. It's like you have the reason, but some of these things you don't want to just go do just cause, you know what I mean? Like you might, like especially at skate parks, I'm thinking where you get warmed up, you get like trying some things, and you maybe get to a place that day where you like, it could be anywhere, but for me it was like kind of skate parks where you're like, shit, I just like blasted something big, or like I just grinded something that was really scary and like quite dangerous, and maybe, you know, at a certain moment I was like pretty high in the fucking air, like higher than I would picture, you know, many years ago, or like these kinds of things were like, does that translate to certain street spots? Like, you know, like the first time that you get to like really play with like kind of a big leagues spot, and like I still haven't even ever really been at, like I've been able to myself skate the low levels of those kinds of things, you know what I mean? Like the beginning level of like fucked up size kind of hammer things, and just getting to those kinds of play, but it could be whatever size. But yeah, I feel like we all wanted to push ourselves, but just no one had that reason to go or to keep going. So maybe like a session or two, someone might do something kind of cool, or maybe once in a while we find something sweet, but it's like there wasn't like a reason to really go hard. And so I wanted just a thing to play with and like to make art with, and it was just it's just always fun to film. But slowly it was like Brown and then our buddy Matt were both wanting to make a part to like, just like Tom Waits was there, let's make a Tom Waits edit. And then Gavin and I were like, let's make parts with JT. And somewhere we were still all friends. We had skated together in the past, but it had been a while since we were like really linking up often. And at that point, maybe JT didn't even really know these like Brown and Matt all that well. But yeah, at some point it was just sort of like, we're the only ones around that we know that are really skating much. And then our buddy Preston was around too, but he was not really wanting to like film a part of himself as much as like the rest of us, I think, were. But yeah, so it just kind of naturally turned into this like makeup of like, okay, we have 5 of us, 5 parts, that's a video. We don't have a friend section, we don't have a really that at the time we didn't really have other people to skate with really. In the process of like that first video, I feel like people like Josiah, Sam, Geoff, Walker, slowly like all these different people like I met or I already knew, or like would come to town like while we were working on number 1. So at a certain point we could have had like a friend's part. Like it's like the video started with just being like 5 people, just give us a reason to get out there and film a thing.
Well, it's a much shorter video than the follow-ups. Yeah,
because it's like, you know, everyone's 4-minute part, 5 of them, give or take, you know, and then that's the intro, outro, and then we're done. So I think it was like 25 minutes or something versus like the 45 and then like an hour.
But it's that statement of intent, isn't it? You know, and I love that idea about tricking somebody into filming a part as well. Again, thing that I tend to do, and I like doing. It excites me to you know, potentially make something with somebody, where you're actually putting things on the line, where there's something at stake, where you're trying to do something new. And then I think where skating has gone to, that, you know, it's inherently linked to something that it's just, you're driven to just do. You're driven to do. You understand the language. You've now got the terrain. You've got to say, okay, look, we're doing something. We're going to work together. We're actually going to, you know, do this part together. And there's an excitement. There's a, you know, that, yeah, it's sort of, it's all very much so communicated through, you know, your videos that you guys sort of said to each other, we're just gonna do this. JT came up a bunch of times just there, and, you know, I suppose I've got to say, you know, he's one of my favorite skaters, actually. You know, he's a chap whose work I've just been, you know, just blown away by. I can just wander off into those sections with the music choice, with the trick selection, with the rock spots, with the knot spots. His take on skating is just absolutely incredible. And you know, he's worked with you on some remarkable skate sections. His part in core 2 and core 3 are incredible. Could you describe what it's like to kind of work with JT? Like, how do your visions of skating complement each other? Is there something to the idea of expanding the acceptable terrain of skating? Is that something that drives the pair of you?
Yeah, big time. JT, I love you, man. If you're watching, hung out with JT yesterday. Yeah, man, JT's the best. He's like, I grew up, I think I'm only like 2 years younger than JT, maybe 3, maybe just 1. I don't actually. But when I was younger, he was from a little bit south of here, and so he would come around and skate with some of the groups I was like going around with, and he would be like, you know, the slightly older friend who I thought was way older because he was so good, and I was like sitting on the ledge, like not able to jump on the rail, and JT would be like doing like 5 different amazing tricks on it, you know. Like JT was the kind of person who, like, every single spot we'd go to, he could skate something there. And even if he just decided to, like, and he usually would decide to skate something that like no one else was skating at a spot, but he would, yeah, he's always been fantastic. So part of the, I'm glad you brought his name up, because part of why like getting the camera was even a thing was like, I feel like I have some moves that I would like to film, but I don't really have that many. So there's no reason for me to, and there's like, it's not a good enough reason for me to get a camera. I wouldn't have said that. Oh, well, whatever. Like, this is my own feeling on it, right? Like, it's like me getting my own footage was not a strong enough reason for me to go seek a camera, try to teach myself to film, try to have someone else who wants to do it or wants to learn with me or knows how. So like, that was its own thing of like, I would like to be filmed and make things, but that's like a backseat hope at that time. The big thing was just feeling like JT's too good of a skater for like this to not be something we can like look at later, and he's too good to not like give him a reason to like get better and to expand and just to like just keep doing it. You know, it's just like every day you go skate with JT and he does a move that like just like is beautiful or mind-blowing or both. And yeah, I mean, he's certainly one of my favorite skaters. I mean, I'm biased, but like, I just, you know, I feel like he combines all these different avenues of how you've seen people skate, and has kind of always done that. Like, I feel like knot spots is a really good mention, and rock spots too, but like knot spots was like, I guess so JT's always skated knot spots. I feel like it's just, I don't know. He's an engineer. He's got a very interesting, I'm sure you'd get along well and enjoy talking with him too. He's like he's a great mind and awesome friend and great skater. And he just approaches skating in a really cool way that I think he tends to find either really sweet tricks or really cool ways to skate a thing or really weird things to skate. But knot spots being one of those things where he was coming off of an injury, I want to say, and finishing lane 1, I feel like he was just like, just kind of like, let's make this part that I can be proud of later, go hard, and then like gets hurt like after the fact later. And then it's kind of like, okay, let's listen to my body and go at its pace. I want to keep skating. It'd be fun to kind of like, at that point, I feel like there really wasn't, like, in bigger picture skating, I feel like I can't remember seeing a ton of skating that was like on, like, we called it not spots because we're like, you're hurt. Let's go to things that are bullshit. Like, let's only choose, like, let's not choose, like, the more real the spot got, the more we'd be like, we probably just shouldn't film that then. Like, it was supposed to be, so it was this fun exercise in kind of being like, let's just take it easy for you, but let's take it easy and try to still be challenging and try to still have fun. But then also try to still kind of like end up with things that are cool and kind of help you to build back your strength without like pushing it and just getting back into like heavy shit right away. Because JT
that's a juggling job, actually, like all of those things that you just mentioned, because I've been in those sorts of dilemmas where like, gotta come back, gotta be chill, can't do the conventional type of tricks that I'm usually doing, so gotta skate on this kind of stuff. And actually the reality is that you're in fucking danger no matter what. It's just a problem. It's a problem no matter what.
Not spots you can still get smoked skating not spots for sure.
100%.
Yeah, and then conversely, it's like sometimes the biggest, craziest thing that you think of is actually sometimes even safer or whatever than the tricky technical little thing. But yeah, because you've had some injuries and time away from, periods of not being skating, and which I think everyone in our crew, that's kind of been a rhythm for like the videos, is kind of like a quarter of the rosters on the bench, and then they get well and other people get hurt, or like, and it'll be like little injuries or kind of like just temporary, very temporary things, or it'll be like long-term, like knee type things or back things, or leg things. Yeah.
I mean, I know you had a really significant injury. I mean, I did actually kind of want to ask you about that, and it's really fascinating. Just because I had a hunch about not spots that I think was off of the back of an injury. I just because I've seen that before, where you have to like kind of reconfigure your style and vision of skating, and it's presented as, this is a legit section, this is just how it is right now, but actually the underpinning is that I'm compromised right now, and this is just how I've justified going out and skating in this way, like this kind of idea of not spots. And rock spots for me was fucking incredible as well, because one of the ideas that I sort of circulate around is making the most of the most mundane street furniture, whether that's rocks or bollards or sorts of posts or anything, is incorporating that into your common skate architecture. And you use the thing that is seen the most, that you would walk past the most and not even bat an eyelid out of. And I think the way that those rocks are embedded into the ground in various different places, set up in all of these different ways, I thought the way that concept was put across was bang on. It was on point and it was fucking dope. And it is one of the sort of more creative and elaborate expressions of a skate section, because it's done so fucking well, and the skater is just amazing, and the camera work itself is amazing. And it's sort of about, I said earlier on, there's something distinct about the kinds of concrete and the rocks, also the kind of rocks that are seen, like in Seattle, it seems, the mossy kind of autumnal hues that come through. All of these things are quite distinct things for me when I think of you guys and I think of Seattle. And I think that rock spots section was just like, it just brought alive all of those things, that you're skating the shit that you would walk past every single day and be like, it's nothing, it's not a spot. And it was just
too bad we can't skate it, like, too bad there's not this there, like, which is still a thing all the time. Yeah, the rock spots, I'm really glad you liked them, man. Those are so fun. Like, those are some of my favorite edits to work on, because I think partially because you're like setting it's kind of like another way of like visual art making, I think of, where you make rules, like, I'm only going to do this, but within that I can kind of do whatever I want, but I'm only going to use these certain colors, or I'm only going to choose these certain materials this time. And it's not saying I'm never going to do other stuff. It's just like, right now, let's just see what I can do with only this limited palette or this limited scope. but within that be like so like not spots was like very intentional of like JT's hurt, let's define it as like just little shit that you can do cool things with and just get weird. Like and it's funny because I feel like we weren't, part of it was like I've never really seen that edit. We've seen it's like at that time I feel like we had seen like Kai and Anders Carlson Wee, and
Anders
probably
Carlson
botching
Wee,
their names, but the
Life
Life
Plus.
Plus, like, yep. So like that was probably the earliest reference, and then mushroom blading, as it's like beginning to appear as like a term and a way of skating, which has obviously gone its own, you know, many different ways. But those things were like probably the only thing, and then like, you know, things like Charles Dunkel skates tons of knot spots. I feel like that was a big piece of the aesthetic, is like he's someone that everyone in sort of our sphere has always enjoyed sort of his skating, or kind of like rejects era, and you know, sometimes ending up skating things like skating a wire, things like skating a chain, or like a just things that are they're like, you use conventional skills, but they're not a spot for like taking the crew. They're like one person will have this wild fucked up idea that you can like do the thing there, and then everyone would be like, dude, you can't grind that, like, or like, that's, you know, it's just, it's whatever it is, it's like something that's a little out of the box, you know.
You guys will straight up skate fucking dustbins and just really gritty, grimy corners, areas, rusty shit. I mean, again, obviously JT's skating. There is actually one more thing that I wanted to just come back to with regards to JT, but certainly just the knot spots idea, you know, things that are movable, things that are trash, things that are rubbish, cracked floor, roots raising up concrete, you know. Is it important to embrace the kind of decrepit and overgrown natural phenomena that will disrupt the concrete, you know, like raised roots, for instance, on a tree and stuff like that, or grinding the caps off of a rail, which is seen in core 2, you know? So it's kind of like I like when things are activated, like something moves and it makes the sound, and it's like an activated type trick. We spoke about that a little bit with Scott a few weeks ago.
I was just gonna say, I remember listening to Scott's thing, and I don't remember who else had, maybe I think Harry had maybe in an interview forever ago. So part of what I wanted to mention just briefly was that like when we were making knot spots, at some point, I don't know if it was just before or just after, I feel like DRC things started to pop up a little bit. And it's funny that you talked with Scott so recently, because I feel like Scott was this adjacent, Scott and Harry were these adjacent people way the fuck in another part of the world.
Not
but
spot
I feel like having some of the, amazing. But having some of those same, like, I've done this kind of skating for years, it's not as interesting, or I'm looking for some different things. I feel like they all, in terms of skating a spot together, you know, they're just like, they're all on a level there. Like they all will find different ways to approach a spot, but they're all bringing that like I don't know what, just like finding their own way to skate the thing that you really just like, you don't see many people, you know, you give them this object and they can't make a cool clip with it. You know, you give it to Harry or Scott or JT, they give you like one of the coolest things you've ever seen on blades, and you don't even really necessarily, you can just describe it, you don't always have like like a trick. You're like, you did the spinny thing there with the, you know, it's like Dom Bruce is kind of that way too, and he's you know, like with sort of like the ways that he can bring conventional skate abilities to just something a little bit out there, or like kind of not skatable, and then it just turns into this thing where you're like, fuck, like that's an amazing trick.
You
almost, rock spots was that way, knot spots was that way, and I feel like those kind of came about from not seeing that much, and then slowly I feel like that approach has kind of like bled into just like every, like right now, Sam and I've talked about it before, where we're like, dude, if you watch probably Rain 2 on, I would guess it's like maybe some high percentage of knot spots, you know. and some of them are more real than others in terms of like their size or their kind of like risk reward. But just tons of just, yeah, we joke about trash all the time. We're like, give us the gross place with movable things, with like, you know, like, yeah, we're always setting up. I think I sent you a few clips that had, it's pretty likely that they had some movable trash and some
Definite
like, you know,
movable trash.
kinetic
Yeah,
objects.
something kinetic where just sort of something just falls on its side, and then the person's just leaving dust in their wake and are in the corner of the fisheye already, you know, that kind of thing. You know, I mean, when I watch clips or when I watch sections, you know, I'm there's so many things that I'm sort of tallying up or trying to figure out in my head what I'm actually seeing right now, what I'm feeling. You mentioned feeling earlier on in terms of your well, what was it? You were sort of describing your appreciation maybe of art. Like, is it the feeling? For me, I'm about like feelings, right? So there's this there's this moment in Chance of Rain 2, right? And this can happen in anybody's skate section or anybody's part. And there's a moment and it's super powerful. And it's not only because of the brilliance of the move, but it's the placement of the clip. And I suppose it's the notes that the particular music track hits in that moment. For me, there's something that's really, really just brutally honest about that particular clip. It's because of the kind of danger that that person is in trying that particular trick. For me, it says something like, if you've got your skates on and you're saying to yourself that I'm going to do this and I'm going to put myself in this kind of danger, and I'm doing it for the agreement of we're doing this video, this film work together, Chance of Rain, and I'm going to put myself in this kind of danger. There's just sort of there's something like this. It's like JT's True Form or something like that, and it's the alley-oop soul 360 alley-oop soul on that handrail, right?
I was like trying to guess. Yeah, that one's like I could watch that clip all fucking day, and that was probably one of the highest. I think that might be the, like, yeah, everything you just said I fully agree with, and it was such a fun day. And JT was like, I think it might be the happiest I've ever seen him out skating, like the most fulfilled, the most freaked out. Like it took him like, I don't know, 2+ hours of just trying. Like he worked up with like alley-oop soul, like in spin, top star, and did like alley-oop soul revert top soul, and just some different moves that were like work. And apparently he could do that move, the alley-oop soul full, like rewind full true soul. He could do that on his P-rail since he was like a kid, I guess. I don't know. He was like, yeah, it's not a hard trick for me on a P-rail. And I'm like, how the fuck is that not like a fun fact? When we joked about it at a later date, I challenged him, like, could you do it switch? And he's like, probably, because I know like his certain like alley-oop souls and like soyal kind of things. And I'm like, yeah, you can soyal left foot, you can alley-oop soul left foot. Could you do that? And he's like, I think so. And he stalled it like almost immediately lefty. So I mean, like someday we might see a switch version of that trick.
You've got good purchase
so
with a soul,
fun.
don't you? Sorry, you've got good purchase with a soul. So it's like stall. Yeah, okay, I get it. It's just like
if it went to a rail, it'd be a whole different thing. Because even though that rail is a toy rail, it's like a total like fun, like just a dreamy. We call them like it's very charming. It's like, you know, it's like
inviting.
Yes, it's very fun to skate. Like it's like weight, like upper thigh height.
Nice.
As you jump, it feel, you know, it's like a knee high ish kind of, like it's real enough to be a real rail, but very inviting, very possible to just enjoy skating.
I feel like spinning on a rail like that is just fraught with danger, and I don't really take into account how high or inviting the rail is. Once you're spinning on a rail like that, it's something in those upper echelons of kind of what's possible on skates, and you know, and it was just the gravity of that moment in the section was so fucking striking. And you must have known it when you got that clip that you had something pretty special on your hands. How did you choose to put, I suppose you could say it's an obvious choice to put that clip there, right? For me, like when I see the structure of a section, when I take in the building of a section, when I take in each separate skate move with that music track, whether it's you know, something grungy, or whether it's more a hip, you know, when you're editing it, that what you're trying to do to the person watching it, or do you know what you're trying to do when you edit that move in right there, because it's perfectly
I know
placed.
what I want to do. I know what I wanted to do, or like, yeah, like definitely this idea of like trying to think about like almost like writing a book, or like telling a joke where you're trying to like invite someone in to a part. Like Derek is probably the main person I can think of, who Derek and Gavin, but Derek probably more so, we've talked about it, where it's just like a part should be watchable overall. It should be something that's like you're not hating looking at, you know, and it's subjective. Everybody, they're gonna have their different desires for what to watch, but it's like you should have a cool first, you could have some trick that makes me interested, like right out the box, because it's kind of like selling you something on the street where you're like, if your first line isn't, or like picking someone up, or like these kinds of things where you're like, if you can't sell me from like the first clip or two, like I'm gonna turn this off. So like, and with that, having like punctuation throughout the edit that like keeps the interest there, so that it's not like, if you would have watched 2 minutes in through all that boring stuff, you'd have gotten to 1 minute of really interesting things. So I guess like that being like the idea that like that trick, you know, I debated it being like his ender because it's just so fucked up and it's so like rarely seen. Like I feel like Murda might have had something like that, maybe on a like a, but I don't think on a
that
down
flat
rail,
rail.
You know,
on that flat rail that they,
like probably on a flat rail, like the ones, yeah, like the ones in Philly that are like
that playground,
they have a couple of different, yeah, they have a few different versions of it, but like I feel like maybe someone had done that trick or something really close to it on one of those kind of things, probably on like a box, like a,
just not with
like
that
velocity, or like
not with that velocity, not with that he's breezing
also
down that rail.
quick too, because that rail's not real long, so it's that whole thing of like short rails are like easier because you don't have to slide as much, but they're harder because the moment, you know, there's not much time to complete the whole thing. So instead of it being like alley-oop, soul, freeze, wait, spin, lock, wait, it's like one whole series of like twisting, tangling things that like happens all in one go, basically. Like as soon as he's on the alley-oop soul, he's immediately winding up for the full rewind, and then, you know, it's like, yeah, it's just such a tangly clip. So it's that move, it's so cool thinking about that move. Yeah, that definitely was one where like while you're filming it, you're like, don't blow it, dude, don't fuck your friend here, like, because you know if he does it, and you, even if it, like, I still feel like it's sad because I feel like I filmed other attempts better than the one we got. I still am like, I'm good with the one we got, but like there's always that, not always, but a lot of times there's that desire for like, you didn't get to see those one like tries where like I was like, oh, I'm gonna get you, dude. And then the last ones, it's like kind of like, I think I'd give myself like a B, just a flat B on the rating scale there. I don't know if you guys do like letter grades in schools.
Letter grades.
But yeah, just like 8 out of 10, you know, just something like that, where it's like, it was good. Nothing was fucked up about it. It didn't ruin anything. So thank fuck. Because
you chose not to place that clip as an ender. How come?
Yeah, so that, like what you were talking about, like what do you want? What, are you aware? Are you thinking about what a viewer is going to feel? I mean, I for any choice you can make, someone's going to say that was the wrong choice for sure. And for any choice I make later on, I wonder if it was the right one sometimes. But for that one, I felt like it was just like, I think it was like when it, like, I'd have to kind of like hum it out, but it's kind of like, I think there's the big long drum. Can is amazing, by the way. That's like who's skating to. I think it's Sing Swan Song. So it's like JT's swan song, even though he has had other things since, but it's kind of like at the time it was like, maybe you won't make another part like this. So, and that's how he felt. So he's kind of like, he was just at a place where he's like, I'm gonna go as much in as I can on this. But yeah, that part in the song, it's like a long drum, whatever, and then it just like it's just this big smashing sensation in the song. Like there's literal drums crashing down and cymbals or whatever it was, and then I think it kicks into like a really heavy part of the song. So it's kind of like it's like a big punch in your throat before like 10 other people run in and start punching your face and kicking you on the ground. Like, you know, it's like, yeah, I like to think of like things like that, like almost like shaking you, like if you're watching it. Cause it's like, I feel like when editing works out really good, like I feel like I've been like hit, you know, like, like you're like, oh, like you're kind of like breathless.
It's really yeah, it's really powerful. It's a really, really like quite overwhelmingly powerful kind of moment. It really sticks out. And it's well placed, that clip, and
makes me really happy that it reaches anyone that way. I mean, that's super cool to hear.
Yeah, and I suppose it makes me think of something else as well, which is, you know, going back to this kind of like not spots, rock spots, and just JT's obviously very diverse palette of ability and skating. But it's like the trick that sticks out to me is kind of like a conventional down rail spot. So it's almost like this guy who is just an absolute pro at skating, who's really like made absolute magic out of knot spots or rock spots or whatever, consolidates all of that non-conventional skating with this fucking balmy hammer down a rail. And that was the one that stuck out with me. And JT's a guy who I think of as like a not spots, rock spots kind of skater, like, you know, not conventional spots, that's for sure. I mean, he does that mistrial on that fucking crane, you know. I think that's in core 3, isn't it? Is that core 3? You know, he does that back mistrial, gap to bank, is it?
Oh, to back on the wall rail?
He like does a fucking mistrial on like a big digger on this like crane. No, it's not a digger, it's a crane, like on wheels.
That's in yeah, that's it. That's his ender. And it was in
the
core 2
ender. That's the core 2 ender, right? Yeah.
Which is funny because it's kind of like it's a spot that's so epic, and it felt like a good conclusion, but I still always kind of toyed with like, is that like, it's kind of like you're saying, the down rail is a boring, like uninteresting spot, but this amazing trick happens. But then this amazing spot with this once in a lifetime chance to skate this crane into this bank, that like that thing hasn't reappeared there. You know, that was like this isn't going to be here forever. Just do something. But that felt, I don't know. I mean, it's funny to think about the things that like at the time you maybe think are more impressive, and sometimes you're kind of like thinking of how someone else is going to receive it, and then other times you're not. And just the sort of those choices for like sometimes it's just kind of your best bet at the moment, and then other times I feel like it's like, you know, it's always aiming at being like, it's always intentional, but I feel like sometimes your intent, or mine at least, like goes back and forth between like, so I still feel strongly about like the alley soul, full true soul. It works the best where it's placed, I think. Like it has you get the most out of it there. And the fact that it isn't the last trick, it kind of like, for me, I think it's important to have some tricks that could have been the opener, the ender. Like your best tricks could just be in a random place in the edit. And like, again, with that punctuation of like, I want to keep you interested. So like every clip should be a really good one if you've saved and are good enough to like complete and fill a full edit. Like every clip should be like worth its weight, like standalone, we could talk about it. But like, you know, sometimes you don't get, you know, you can't have an A every single time. And so sometimes there's clips that are a little, you know, maybe you could lose it if you got something better. But that's one of those ones where you're like, that's a super important trick in that collection of clips and in that song. And that's an important moment in the song. And so like,
yeah,
I feel like, yeah,
it was a linchpin. It absolute linchpin. But I love what you just said. That any, like, you know, it's that jigsaw idea. You're sort of assembling this timeline, this jigsaw of incredible, you know, singular clips. But there is a way to weave some sort of narrative or coherence through those different locations and tricks. And with the music, you then, you know, you help mingle all of that stuff together in a completely different way as well. Just the idea of subplots, and I don't know, are there subplots in some of your films? And I'll give you an example of what I think could be a subplot, right? And again, we've got a sort of a slight understanding of what's going on in each other's lives just from like social media posts and stuff like that.
Right.
I know that Sam Askin was a huge part of your group, and subsequently moved from Seattle.
Shout out Sam, love you.
Definitely shout out Sam. Amazing skater, incredible skater. Sort of style of skating that just slow burns on you. It's just like, has this guy got a million clips, or like literally just is just shitting clips out, and it's just incredible.
Random factoid, I think Sam compiled something like 15 minutes of footage for core 2, and then we used whatever we used for his part, or sorry, for core 3, sorry.
Was the choice of his section being a closing section a kind of, was there a significance in his section being a closing section to the film? Is that the sort of a subplot idea kind of thing?
I think so. I think it's kind of, I think it materialized initially, and then still I think it kind of like the ordering of the parts kind of naturally creates itself, because it's kind of like, oh well, this person's going really fucking hard right now, and they're just going every time we're out, and their stack of footage is just like really fucking, you know, substantial, or just fucked up, just great. So it's kind of like each time I feel like it slowly has become like my part. There was no plan for me to be an ender in the first video, and I still kind of feel embarrassed about that.
I was going to ask you about that.
A lot of people decide not to put themselves in their videos, but it just was like, dude, we're not like even having anyone, like no one's making this for us. There's no like, it just was like, how am I not going to eat the cake that I baked with my friends? You know what I mean? Like, but also that was mainly because JT got an awesome job opportunity. He was going to be the ender, like far and away. If we could wrangle Matt Chrissinger, who also has an awesome part, amazing skater. Mm-hmm. He was like our local legend who never really got to take off. So we were like, dude, if we can get Matt to make his unicorn part and like pull the Sword of Destiny here, like it would just like shine a light into like what we're all missing in our lives of skating. So Matt was like the hopeful ender. JT was like pretty much the guaranteed ender, and it was going that way. And I had some good footage and I wanted to make a really good part, but I was kind of like, I'll just make a strong part that's with the other ones. And that was the only time that a video, like I ended up being the ender just because Matt got hurt a few times. JT had to move away. Gavin wasn't wanting to like kind of make that sort of a part. And Brown was a skateboard friend who like, it was a blade video with skateboard. Like we call it a hybrid video, but it's kind of like, you know, it's a blade video more than a skateboard video. But so that was the only one where like I accidentally ended up almost like needing to just like decide to go skate harder than I necessarily would have to fill that like ender role, which was super fun to do. But since then, the method has kind of naturally arrived at like JT has the first part in the first video. So again, with like parts being like a small view of this and videos being a large view, like punctuation, like a strong opening, a strong ending, strong middles, like you want strength everywhere, but like, you know, that our opening and ending, at least for my equation of like how I kind of go about constructing this stuff, you know, you really want a strong opening and start. And JT was a dope part anywhere, but dope opener in Rain 1. Naturally, the time in his life came that he was like putting it on super hard. So then he's the ender for Rain 2, and he's going really hard for it. Like he, you know, it's like the kind of thing of like, he didn't deserve it. He earned being the ender. And like, I didn't deserve the ender in the first one really, but I kind of, I would say that I earned it because it just from pushing yourself at that time. Right. So I then kind of like stepped down a bit in different stuff. And so I'm in a different like season of my life for Rain 2. JT's in a season of his life where he's, both of them actually, I think maybe Sam's in the middle somewhere has this, but a lot of these like really prolific moments in your skating time coincide for us, at least, with like harsh breakups that like force you into, you've talked about it at some point about kind of like the ego blading, I think you mentioned, where it's like just feeling like or like the anger, like fuck, like I'm just gonna fucking go throw this shit, like, you know, like those kinds of feelings where certain times in your life that maybe you, I don't know, I'm rambling, but basically JT was at a point like that for just sort of some, you know, personal relationships. And so like that was a time in his skating where he was just going hard as fuck. So it was like, JT's gonna definitely be the ender here. So then we have like the opener becomes the ender for the next project. Sam opens Rain 1 and he's going super hard, but he gets kind of hurt and has mixed things. And each, I think everybody, a common thread is like subplots, like you said. Everyone's kind of like starting from like, I've never made a real part. That's everyone's like opening into the crew. Like, let me just make one real part so I can die happy. And then from there, it's like, I could maybe make another. And then that with videos too, we're like, let's just make one video. That's it. And you're like, we can make another one. And just kind of like continuing that ball, but with the opener ender, the subplots. Yeah, it's kind of like the first part, the way it's gone so far has become the ender part, kind of by virtue of someone beginning that like road of like really getting into their own, like finding their own skating and really pushing themselves. And then eventually just falling into like, every time we go out, you're just the MVP, you know? So Sam occupied that role for 3, JT was there for 2, and I accidentally ended up there for 1. But there's some of that I feel like is one of the subplots, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that beautifully put. And it's kind of how everybody's because yeah, when we were out skating with each other, street skating, filming with each other in that group, there is an element of putting to one side the periphery of life, like everything else that goes on in life, whether that's a breakup, whether that's, you know, your pay's getting cut at work, whether that's you've got illness within your family, and all of these really real difficult situations that each person would face. So it's kind of like that venue where it's like you know, this is just for skating, and you know, we're just doing the skating. But actually, it, you know, as you grow older and things become more real, this process of putting together video parts and skate sections and really investing in this form of art and this practice of skating, it breathes through your life experience otherwise outside of skating. And I think that in some way that sort of presents as those subplots, because as you say, you might have somebody who's going through something who comes into that session with a lot of emotions, and they're not going to directly state, I'm just going through this rough time, so I'm about to hurl myself down a massive handrail, film it. Yeah. But it's more like you're getting that sense that something's going on, and their skating style and, you know, how they're actually presenting in their body and the sorts of things that they're going for just says all of that. And, you know, then that then comes through in each of those video clips maybe, and then it may be veiled, it may be hidden. You might not be able to tell that in the final project, the final product rather, that's exactly what's going on. But there's that layer of interpretation when I'm watching skate videos of like grown adults, and, you know, I know from my own point of view that there's lots of stuff that's going on that's really difficult in life that I actually then end up going through and filtrating through my skating in some kind of way. But then there's a translation, there's an application to the actual video clip as well. And sometimes you get reactions post clip in the roll away, in the aggression or the poise or grace that's being taken on by that person in the clip. I like to incorporate some of those things that I either know is going on by what I'm seeing, or do you know what I'm saying? It's like those qualities that they come through the video and create those subplots. And I think
it's you can never divorce your life outside of whatever you're doing from sort of what you're doing. So work, skating, all this stuff, it's kind of like you maybe are not your art altogether, but your art is very much you at whatever time you make it. So it's kind of like that time capsule idea of like you're skating at this point, like we talked about, kind of like the hurling yourself at stuff, like that's probably the most notable maybe impressive moment of like, I was feeling like this, so it kind of created this like big spurt of productivity or something. And it's kind of like a notable point, like the alley soulful true soul would be one where it's kind of like, you know, JT is not that reckless right now, so I don't think he would probably go throw that, you know, but at that moment he was fucking willing to like put it all the chips down, you know. I mean, and he still does things that are like, I would say equally like impressive, but they wouldn't be, it might not be like that specific kind of a thing. And, you know, just that sort of thing of like seasons of your life and times where you're like, I'm just willing to fucking say fuck it right now. Or like lately, I feel like this, like you're talking about subplots, like, or we're talking about it, but like, you know, it's kind of like my skating and some of my friends, I feel like there's like a subplot there, or like a thing you could see of like people who are doing pretty okay with their life at the moment and not feeling some massive angst for, you know, and that's mixed depending on who we're talking about and at what time, and it ebbs and flows, but generally speaking, it's like, and certainly I guess I could only really comment for my own skating, where it's kind of like, you know, yeah, not wanting to do certain things and like having a certain kind of flow. And it would have been there from different parts for all of us, like times where you're just having a very chill day, it's very fun, and like that's what the clip feels like, versus like, this is really fucking intense right now, like I'm like really doing this thing that's really requiring me to really be here, instead of like, I'm just gonna breeze around, like this is fun.
So some of the parts that come to mind that may be the antithesis of hectic, dangerous, hairy, scary kind of skating. There's two guys. So Derek's one of them, and that will obviously stick out to any inline skater, being like, you know, who's this?
Why is there skateboarding here?
who's this skateboarder? But I find his skating very calming.
Yeah.
And because it's not as flip oriented as some of the other skateboarding that I've watched, and it's not as sort of like concerned maybe with the arena of skateboarding. He seems to be exempt from that. I mean, I think by virtue of just hanging out with you guys, but his skate style, again, it's just really calming, and it's like, it's very comfortable and familiar, and it didn't take a moment to get going with how he's skating. And, you know, especially with you know, the sort of what he very rarely does, like manipulates the board without using his hand, and likes those acid drop style moves as well. And again,
bonuses, dump truck, or I think dump trucks, where he's kind of on a thing and then pullovers, kind of ollie into it, like put his nose on something, kind of like doing like a macchio, like a grabbed macchio, and then pulling over into a bank, kind of. No, it's crazy, because when I watch older footage of Brown, there's moves that I'm like, you can do that, and he's like, yeah, I used to do that shit. Like, it's kind of like the handrail skater who eventually just finds like a lot like JT, a lot like all of us, but you know, it's like, he's just like, fuck it, man. I like doing bonuses. I like fucking doing ollies. I like these certain tricks where he's like, this old dog has only got a few tricks, and they're fun to do, and fuck it, I'll put like as many of them in my part as I want. And the cool thing is, like, even within, we talk about like not spots, like parameters, but like kind of like, even within parameters, you still have a lot of potential for other stuff. Brown has, true to everyone else, I think too, you know, been like, I'm not going to be able to make a part ever. Like Rain 1, he's like, I might have a few clips. Oh, I made a real part. Wow, I'm really proud of this. And I'm like, but I'm done now. And then like Rain 2, like, wow, this is my best part I've ever made. And like, but I'm done now. And then like Rain 3 for him, like, dude, shit, you're still doing things that are, you know, it's always going to be like something that's interesting and fun and kind of like, I don't know, but to that end, Brown continues to raise the stakes for things that are like pretty fucking dangerous or big drops. He's always liked, you know, jumping off things. Yeah, he's always liked jumping off things. And I didn't grow up skating with him often. Like, I knew him through that friend Tyler I mentioned earlier. So we had skated together a handful of times, and he used to be like more clicked into kind of the skateboard scene out here. And he still has friends and acquaintances, and, you know, has, I think with some older people from that scene, it's kind of like some of them would know Derek or be like, oh, Derek, but like, he's basically fully removed himself, like you said, from just sort of skateboarding convention. I mean, he's like willing to just say fuck any amount of like prestige or cachet he gets from being a skateboarder, and just say like, I skate with rollerbladers only.
Yeah.
Like he'll skate with certain skateboard friends sometimes, but he skates alone or he skates with bladers. That's it. And it's kind of always been that way with Brown. He's like one of the best friends I could ever, hope to know. Like he's just said, like you said, it's like anybody who, I think it definitely comes through in his footage. It's more of that, like, you are your art in a way. Like he is such a warm, awesome person to be around. And I feel like there's definitely some of that comes through in his footage.
Definitely you need him in the videos. You need what that communicates, like his skating. I love how he doesn't do too many flip tricks. There are literally, I think, a couple, one with using his hand and another not, and maybe there's one really lofty ollie that I can remember, but then otherwise a couple of shove-its, really cool shove-its. There's one fucking wicked shove-it. What does he do that? I can't remember, but
they're few and far between, and not tons of grinds.
But I love how that sort of, that those particular moves will stick out and will almost consolidate like his overall skate style and where he's at with skating right now. And it is that kind of look. I can show you guys what time it is. Like I can still, do those things that are valued in those conventional metrics of kick flips or heel flips or whatever that stuff is. But he's like, yeah, no, I've done that. But actually, how I'm skating right now is more about how I'm skating right now. And it's more about in this milieu with Carter and the homies, it's doing these certain types of runs. Maybe it's doing these certain types of not spot drops, and it's incorporating rocks and stuff like that. The what Seattle looks like. He fits very, very, very well with you guys, and I'm sure that's something that galvanizes you guys a lot, is having that different look, that different perception. Does he film you? Would he film? Fisheye?
Yeah. So like I feel like so I mean, Brown is just the best. It's just like we could sit here and talk about how amazing he is. He's in his spare time, he was working on learning how to brew beer and has slowly stepped up ranks to be like now one of like 3 head brewers at a really respected, like awesome brewery that's in the city here. And he just is someone with a lot of talents in music making and just creative projects in general. But yeah, so he was sort of one of the people that kind of taught me how to film, because he was much more knowledgeable about it than I was when I began. And then he was kind of like had been away from it for a bit, so we kind of taught each other. I kind of helped him get back into it, and he helped me learn some things. But he filmed like Rain 1, I think he filmed like 90% of my part and probably half or more of every other part as well. Maybe with the exception of Gavin. I feel like Gavin and I were going out one-on-one a lot at that time. But yeah, so and then other videos too. It's like he edited all of Rain 1. We edited it together, but it was like lived on his computer. We would work on it like once or twice a week for a handful of hours, sit around and edit whoever's part. But he would do tons of stuff on his own, and like the whole like the aesthetic of the video, I feel like are things that we all naturally arrive at or agree on or kind of all enjoy, like things like kinetic spots, things like not spot, like just there's things that like everyone likes, and then things that we've come to like because we do them together, we kind of develop them together. But Brown is like the person who like like the logo is like a drawing that Brown made, and the letter style is like from his choice that I've like later made a few different iterations of through like drawings and printmaking. And so like the sort of like the format, like the Tom Waits intros to people's parts, the like filter in the first video in the intros, like I feel like whatever you could say that like is the vibe in the videos, like we owe it, like not 100%, like we all help, and everyone, like there's a lot of like everyone putting some
a lot of exchange of ideas.
Yeah, like everyone's putting things into stew, but like really like the reason we have what we have, or like it feels the way it feels, I think is because of Brown.
Amazing.
And like I'm always trying to toy with like keeping with the spirit of like how the videos feel, and then also trying to put some things in that like kind of like aren't like certain songs are just like, oh, that's a fucking Chance of Rain song for sure. Like that's definitely would work, no brainer. It would work in the video. It'd be hard as fuck. And then other things are kind of like, does this belong here? And sometimes some of those choices, there's only a few of them really. I don't know. It's like hard to pin down kind of like what, like, you know, what makes your choices instead of just random choices. And that's a bigger, weirder conversation. But yeah, it's kind of like, we owe some, like Brown's musical choices influence, I'd say like 70 to 80% of all the stuff we choose. Brown was kind of like the visionary to begin it. He's like slowly passed the torch to me. I feel like we've been equal partners from the jump, but it's shifted maybe from like a 70-30 thing. Like he's kind of in more control to begin. But it's definitely like a very like he's you know like my partner in making the things. And yeah.
With filming Fisheye, particularly with Fisheye, were there things that Derek imparted to you, and how did that translate in terms of him being on a deck and probably having to sort of almost kneel down on the deck, to you being on inline skates? And you know, how do those techniques apply to filming Fisheye particularly?
Sometimes for like follow lines, I like, and so everyone has filmed some clips in all the videos, I would say, with the exception of maybe a few people, or like some people not as much as others, but you know, it's kind of like at some point or another, I think everyone's held a camera and films throughout the video, which would kind of be fun to like put the initials at the bottom of every clip.
Sweet. Yeah.
Like Josiah filmed this, Sam filmed this, Brown filmed this, Derek Brown. We just call him Brown mostly. It's funny, it makes me like double take when I start to call him Derek. But yeah, like, and JT's a great filmer. Like we've all soaked up and taught each other things about filming, again, by like virtue of not having people to just rely on doing it. So it's kind of like this sort of DIY, like we're not going to have someone come and choose for us to be in their video. So we'll make our own. Like, you know, we're not going to get on a team. Like even though there are like merits to this stuff that like it wouldn't be surprising for me. Like we see our peers and our whatever, and like some are sponsored, some are not. And like, you know, it's not like I don't think the stuff holds its own weight, but it's also like none of us are expecting. Maybe some are wanting, but for the most part, it's kind of like none of us have like any expectation or like real like hope that like we're going to get the like sponsor dream. I mean, that dream is kind of like, that ship's kind of sailed for a lot of people, like as an industry, right? Like it's kind of, we're not at a point where that's very realistic, and it kind of never was. It's like lottery stuff, you know, how likely is it to win the lottery? But particularly now, it's kind of like no one's going to show up and ask us to be in their video. I mean, at this point, because we've made some things, that is maybe a little bit of a different conversation with, you know, certain friends or whatever, or even like people like yourself, where like we don't, you know, we've never met, we never skated together, but we are aware of each other's skating. And so like there's certain things that now you could end up collaborating with someone or doing something. But, you know, it's kind of like, I feel like
well, that would have been a dream. That's an absolute dream of mine. I mean, since
dude, it'll happen at some point. We'll do it. But it's but it's funny because it starts with just being like, no one's gonna come here and skate with us. No one's gonna come here and film us. No one's gonna take the time to edit this thing. So like, unless we just decide to do it, and like with that, like no one's gonna film me unless I like ask them to hold a camera for me. So, and you know, to that end, it's like Derek already knew what he was doing. He's taught me a lot about just sort of the ways that fisheye looks good or looks confusing or can be used in ways to like maximize the stuff, like the just the way it behaves, you know, like
do you find yourself breaking
like
any of those rules, you know, those sorts of
breaking them.
Do you find yourself breaking some of those rules when it comes to the fisheye?
Sure. Yeah. I think sometimes you kind of just like the spot like forces you to like, particularly like with like things like general rule fisheye, be on the side that the skater faces, like so that their body and their face is facing you when they're in, like throughout ideally most of your clip. But sometimes the spot, it looks bigger or better, or the thing that's interesting about it is on the opposite side of that. So sometimes you kind of like have to, and then sometimes certain tricks I think look better sometimes like from that like butt side, wrong side, like certain things where like maybe there's a switch up happening and the footing is like the thing that we want to pay attention to. And sometimes it's kind of like being on the right side where they're facing you, you'll almost end up with like their knees closer to your lens as opposed to their skates. So there's sometimes where I feel like fisheye just is like, and a lot of times I feel like I'm like on the fence of like, I don't know which side to be on. And until they do the move, I don't know if it like goes through the lens and looks cool, or if it just looks like it's kind of flat, you know, like, so some things you know are going to be like action, like that's what to do. Some things are no brainers, but definitely there's some things that like, yeah, you kind of might break that rule or I don't know what, but I think there are some things where like spinning, like if my camera's pointing, like try to, I don't know, like if I guess I have a camera somewhere. Let me see, 1 second. Like if my camera is pointed over here to start this clip and it ends way over here without like a ton of things in the middle, like gently, like when it spins too much, I think it just tends to be disorienting. When you tilt it straight up under fisheyes, it tends to look bad. I'd say like part of that I think is like I think it's like a figure ground relationship would be like the art terminology where you're like kind of like reference points, like when it's just all sky and feet. You can have like moments of that. I find you can have moments of it, but when you have too much of it throughout a full clip, I think sometimes you lose a lot of like what someone's skating. And these are all things that like I fucking blew it for, you know, you pick these things up because you make mistakes and you fucking suck at filming for a while, right? And like still like blow it at filming sometimes. Thankfully my numbers are a little better than they were when I started. Like I can pretty reliably say like I can film a thing without being worried that I'll film it okay or good or great. But like yeah, the fisheye thing is really fun. It's fun. It's like it's so fun to film lines. Like yeah,
what do you get like, what do you get from that? Like I fucking love filming lines. I love filming. I have
a hunch we get a lot of similar things out of filming lines is my guess. And you like filming too, like filming and doing the tricks. So it's kind of like we both have been on both sides of like what that's like to coordinate essentially you know, I've heard people kind of call it a dance, which it kind of is. It's like, you know, it's fun. I like the behind the scenes aspect of like, for it to look the way it looks, things have to happen that you need to be knowledgeable about doing. And unless you do them behind the camera, it's just the tricks don't look the same. Yep. And so people I think who don't care or haven't seen it much, just sort of say like, well, just film it. It's on film. Or they'll be like, why doesn't this look like this person's footage? Like I'm filming it, I'm skating by them, you know. And there's like lots of little just things you pick up that help to make fisheye filming like exciting and make sense. Because when you do it bad, and I've done it a ton, it just is confusing and it doesn't show the trick or the spot or the coolness, and it doesn't make anything better than it actually is in real life. It just kind of makes it like just you know, sometimes it ruins tricks.
And talking about you know, quite extreme use of the fisheye leads me to think about Jeff Phillip. And I know that you know, you've worked with Jeff and you had a profile with Jeff, is that right, for Secret Project 2?
I owe a lot of like any of my involvement with skating to Jeff.
In what way?
What's that?
In what way?
Oh, sorry. Like when I met Jeff, I had quit skating for a little bit and then it started up again, but was just like, I'll just go to the local skate park in this like little town where I was going to college, a few hours from where he was living in Idaho. But I met him very randomly through like just random chance of someone giving him my number essentially. And he was just like making edits, filming people all the time, an amazing skater himself. And so yeah, I'm really lucky to have met him and been able to like skate with him and film with him and like make things with him on both sides of like, so when I met him, you know, it's kind of like, I had not really had people that want to make edits of me, like just period. I wasn't a skater worth filming. And even though like I felt like I could do some moves, if someone like wanted to film me, I could at least get you a few clips in your montage. Like I'm getting better. I'm starting again. So I'm like,
might we see an alley-oop negative training wheel?
Oh, there's that's probably my
that's your trademark, right?
I don't know. I don't think I've really seen people do them much. I stumbled into that trick randomly, I think, because I was teaching myself just alley-oop nigmachias and I would do it with rolling. And then like one time it kind of just happened and it was like, that feels, when those go right, they feel so fucking cool.
Well, I love how you rewind out of them. I love how you exit them.
Man. Yeah, I feel like that makes it. When you go the other way or you go to fakie, they're not that cool. True spin is a hard one, but the weird thing is like the rewind out of the true spin isn't that cool either. The alley-oop to rewind is the one that I feel like the mechanics of it just work the best and it feels the best. And
mechanics is that's an excellent way of describing it because the mechanics just make sense. It's really satisfying. It's like a satisfying movement. Not everything
you get to stomp out of it when you do that, and then it also, I feel like something about the way it looks just looks better. But that's, you know, my own thing. But yeah, so that is one of my favorite tricks. And I have to force myself not to do too many of them. I kind of like give myself one or two of them in a part. And I'm like on the hunt for a new, ideally like a skinny object to do one on, but I've also done a few of them at this point and I don't necessarily need to do more, but they're fun to do. They're so fun. But yeah, Geoff is he and I made, so he tricked me into filming, I think kind of like we were going to film a part of him and we did for whatever summer it was. And then he was also like, let me get some footage of you. So we made whatever part it was, we made a part of him. And then he also got me enough footage to split a thing with JT in Secret Project 1, I think. So I think JT and I split a thing. And then in number 2, JT and I both like stacked enough to have our own thing.
Yeah, your part in Secret Project 2 is fucking amazing. I mean, a lot of your moves it's sick. A lot of your moves almost like go under the radar in a way. Like you've got to kind of go back and watch them a few times to establish what you skated on or over. There's sort of something fleeting about the connection or contact you make with what you're skating on. Is this a deliberate way of skating for you? You know, like, I mean,
I don't grind super long things at the moment. I guess that's part of it. I just as I'm thinking about it, it's like, I guess there are a lot of like quick hit, skate around, quick hit, you know, like as opposed to something where I'm really like balancing and staying for a long period of time. It's kind of like that idea of like JT's alley-oop soulful true soul, where it's like movements that are kind of like one full through thing. I guess something about that feels better. Like, again, I guess there is some preferencing of like quicker movements or things, like some trick where you're in it and you're out of it quickly, and you've slid enough of it for it to be a real slide, but you're also not like, there's not tons of time for a viewer to like, for you or the viewer to kind of catch up to like balancing, waiting. So I guess there is something to kind of like, I don't know. I think I enjoy filming lines, but I also like skating them. And it's just fun to like, just feel like I guess it goes back to like early skiing stuff of kind of being able to go through a course and just sort of like get a thing. Like skating skate parks, that's like when I don't really like skate parks very much these days, but when, it's just fun to like be able to go to a place and be able to just keep doing tricks, even if they're kind of shitty ones, or you don't really land one, but just kind of keep going, just keep moving around. And something about that just feels really nice. And, you know, like secrets to the smoke and mirrors, it's like, it is smoke and mirrors, because you're like, I can't do certain things that I know are really cool, but I do have some things, and if I do them well enough and we show them in a way that makes them look cool instead of looks bad, and we can sort of trick you in a way into like maybe viewing all of our skating a little more favorably than it might come out without any of the presentation, even though I still think everyone is a great skater that I'm lucky enough to like film with, but certainly there's something to like all of us having, I mean, there's times where all of us have done moves that are like very much good for kind of anyone in the world that I'd be like, are you going to do that trick on this spot? And it'd be like, that's a great trick, dude.
Yeah.
But then there's also an element of like everyone feeling like this, I think it's with blading in general, but like a little bit of an inferiority feeling of like, it's not that great. It's like, dude, it's great. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, my skating's just not that great. Or like, this trick's it's not that worth filming. And you're like, dude, film that. That thing is awesome. Like, and it's all, I think that's something that everyone believes in their own skating enough in our crew, but also there's a feeling of kind of like, do you think that's something is that worth filming? And everyone like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Like that's a move. So there's some common thread of that between all of our kind of things we've collaborated on, I think.
Yeah. Your particular palette of moves, as you say, it's not about balancing. It's not about really. I'm actually interested. Was Secret Project 2? I mean, you hurt yourself really bad. You broke your leg, right?
Yeah, snapped it right in half. Should have been like, without attention, it should have been like amputated. Like in a different day or a different place or whatever. It's like you just lose the leg, or you lose your ability to use it right. So
when was that? Was this prior to Secret Project 2?
No, it was like probably a summer after.
Maybe. Summer after.
Maybe 2, maybe a year after. We were almost done filming Rain 2, or sorry, Rain 3. No, Rain 2. Sorry.
Yeah. You
and Secret Project 1 and Secret Project 2 have kind of a tandem. Like I think they're started slightly after Rain 1 and 2, and so they're sort of like similar timing for like when we're working on Rain 2. Geoff is also filming Secret Project 2. They just are released. I don't remember which was first in each sequence, but so it's kind of like sort of like a vacation from the Chance of Rain filming when Geoff comes to town, and we're like, let's put on for Geoff because he's only here for like a few weeks or something, and like would like to have footage, and like awesome filmer, awesome editor. So it's kind of like, let's just like put all of our eggs in Geoff's basket for now while he's in town and try to stack some things for him.
Were you able to?
But that was pre-injury.
Were you able to recover fully from that, and did that have an impact on the kinds of things that you chose to skate? I mean, I sort of made that remark on your sort of glancing faint contact on certain things, like in Secret Project 2 there's these quite faint momentary definitions of a lock. I fucking love the back Mugen up the walrus. I mean, that is an absolutely incredible trick. It's, you have the nice
once in a lifetime spot that you get to just, I had so much fun skating that thing that day, because it was like wanting to find that kind of a thing and then just calming down enough to be like, okay, you finally get to skate this kind of a thing, have fun, and then just like do it like 50 times just because it's fun.
I bet you did it a bunch of times. It looked really fun to ride over that.
And it was now it's like the front of a business that's very much not skatable. There's benches everywhere. It's the front courtyard of, things are weird at the moment, but it's kind of like, I knew it was not going to be skatable for very long. Like it'll be there, you'll want to skate it, but it'll be a crowd of people having lunch every day in front of that thing.
I had a very similar feeling yesterday. I was out, and it was the first session of filming that I've done for many, many months now. And we're at a particular area in London, and there are a couple of spots that were new to me that I hadn't seen before. One of them is just this like fucking amazing spot, and the landing of it is completely clear right now, but as soon as businesses open up again, like the restaurants, it's just going to have benches all over the bottom of it, and I'm sitting there just like plotting how I would skate this particular thing. Like, oh my god, I've got 2 bangers on this thing, and I'm just like, I don't know if that's even going to be a thing by the time I'm actually doing some proper aggressive skating again. I've got a little knee injury right now that I'm recovering from, but you're just sort of thinking, oh my God, that's not even going to be there anymore. And such is the ever changing availability of things to skate. You know, at the moment, it seems we've just got a crazy abundance of shit to skate, and that's not just because everyone's been a little bit starved of it with lockdowns and so on and so forth, but it just seems as though I don't know how to describe it. It's like I've never seen London so healthy for places to skate, so I can't be too down about, oh, that particular spot might not be available. But you know, striking while the iron's hot is certainly something that we have built into us as people of the streets. You know, it's like, is that thing going to be there anymore?
Dude,
so,
we I feel like something else about kind of like why we arrive at like whatever it is that like the cruise kind of thing is, or things or vibes or you know, sort of aesthetic. It's like one of those things is definitely like we talked about trash, but like the whole the idea of like things that are going to disappear, like things that like broken things that are going to be rebuilt very soon. Someone's going to fix it. It's going to be thrown away. So like getting that lucky moment of being, or like things that like the crane disappeared. I'm still kicking myself because earlier this year I had a chance to fucking switch wall ride some kind of giant digging construction device thing. And it was just one of those moments where you're like, is this too small to be worth it? Do I want to sidetrack our day? I don't know, when you're filming, if you ever feel this way, where you're like, this is cool. If someone else was doing it, I'd probably like almost demand they do it. But the ledge I was going to skate to lead up to it did not slide. The thing, I'm like, if it was just a little bit taller, it'd be a way cooler wall ride. And I'm kind of like, is the juice worth the squeeze? This is an amazing once in a lifetime chance to skate this kind of thing. I've never skated, but it's like, it ended up just being a thing that I was like, it's we call them hard maybes, where, you know, you're just like, this thing's almost sick, but it's just kind of not quite there. But I still feel fucking dumb for not just getting it and deciding later if I want to use it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I had
the idea of the things that pop up, like your landing that's open, or like that kind of shit. We're like, dude, do it today. There are always cars there. You have to like you have to take advantage of this moment where like the thing's not going to be that way tomorrow.
And I had to not forcibly kind of convince somebody to skate, but it was kind of like, we're at this amazing spot. I don't think this is going to exist in a few weeks' time, at least not the way that we're treating it right now. In London at the moment, it's this like very, very unique situation whereby it's sort of post-lockdown, but it's still kind of lockdown. You haven't got the go-ahead for the economy to start again. So businesses, eating places, and the central financial district are definitely not a thing right now. So the availability of places that otherwise would be problematic is just rampant right now. So it's this very, very unique period of weeks or months at this moment in time. So, you know, yesterday, that kind of conning somebody into like skating, I found myself doing that, not because it was like, oh, well, I can't skate right now, so you've got to skate because I've got the, you know, it was just like, dude, like,
someone should do this.
Let me just whisper into your ear right now. Like, this might not be here, and I wouldn't want you to regret not just doing this right now, because I know what that feels like. It's a big regret if you pass something up. But the thing is, I end up in a situation where I'm super self-conscious that basically everything's just like, could you film me? Because if I had it my way, when I'm out skating, I'd just be fucking doing shit non-stop. Like, I'd just be skating, clip. But the thing is that I actually fucking love filming myself. And it's that, you know, I want to be an agent that galvanizes the crew and cons or forces or helps people to realize their own skill set as well. and make use of that environment as they see fit, not just through my own lens, but through their lens. And I think that's just a super powerful thing about having a crew like the core crew, like Seattle Chance of Rain crew. It's like, you guys are very interwoven with your skate style, clearly the ideas you exchange, how you talk and communicate with each other, and what's left is not just something that is for yourselves in that time capsule, mantelpiece look back when you're much older. It's something that's highly relevant in the progression and sort of strength of that elite skate material that keeps people like myself, and certainly the group of people that I skate with, involved in skating to the depth and commitment that we are involved with it. It's like, we need to see those approaches, that commitment, that strength, those bonds, those relationships communicated through those formal films and video works. And that's something really quite fucking beautiful and powerful. It's
Damn,
like
thanks, man. I'm glad it's like it's worth it just for the friends that you have fun times with, but it's really cool when you get to hear that, it's something else that just was a good watch for somebody, or it has more impact than that, or just is, something they would watch again. Just because I know that I appreciate certain edits and videos that I've seen through the years in that same way, where you're kind of like, it's just that in that cool thing of kind of like seeing what other people are up to, and symbiotic thing of like watching your thing gets me hyped to go skate, and then turns out like you sometimes watch things I would have made, like not necessarily the two of us per se, but just in general, like the ways that like cross-pollination happens of like people are watching other people, and it all amounts to kind of like everyone feeling a little more inspired and excited about doing the stuff we all go out to do, and kind of like sharing like getting ideas from other people that maybe you weren't quite thinking of an approach to a trick quite like that, like, and then maybe the next time you're somewhere, you kind of like, you have that with you now, and you're kind of like, oh, I guess you kind of do like sort of like what I've seen someone do on that thing here. Like,
it's kind of like it's just this impression that's left on you from watching certain things, and it's really difficult to exactly put your finger on it, but as you say, it's like, it's very inspiring, it's very striking, sometimes it's emotional. Like, take for instance Dustin's section, Dustin Spengler's section in Chance of Rain 3. Is that what I'm talking about? With that,
it's the kind of weird, it's the pretty weird song.
Oh, I love it. I
love
it.
No, me too. But yeah,
it's like quite kooky and ethereal, and it's sort of like this wonderland type feeling. It's a jam. It's just like, I kind of, I want to skate like that. Like, I want to skate how that feels to watch it, and it's like I want my skating to look like that. Like I want to look like that. It really did.
Yeah.
It's,
no, I know what you mean about like watching a part and having that kind of feeling, and not even particularly about like only one's that type of song or type of skating, but just when you watch a thing and it really gets you like that, and you're like, I want to go out and have that feeling now. Like, I want to go find the spot that lets me skate like that, right? Like,
yeah, it's that like calmness, or that comfort, or that familiarity, or maybe it's just how technically or creatively astute Dustin is. Maybe it's that kooky, weird, ethereal song.
He's amazing.
He is amazing. It's all of those.
We're going skating today. I'm actually gonna meet up with him and some of the boys in a little bit here. We're closing in on Dustin being a father very soon.
Yeah,
so
I've seen on
he's gonna get a handful of more weeks. I think his baby's due pretty soon, but yeah, he's such a fantastic skater. It's really cool that we met on like a Colorado road trip, I think, and then he maybe just decided to visit, or we talked about him visiting, or maybe he had a layover and decided to stay a little longer. I think it was when he was going to Roskilde Festival one year, and he was like, I could just stay in Seattle for like 5 days or a week or something. So he did, and we just kind of become more and more friends. And then he moved out to Olympia, which is like 45 minutes from here, something like that. Yeah, and yeah, he's amazing.
I just missed him when he came to London. He actually was in London last
Yeah, I
year.
remember, like, yeah,
Just missed him. But
he's a pleasure to watch on skates. He's just got such a like beautiful style.
he's a smooth motherfucker. There's no
And
doubt
great
about that.
tricks. Like, yeah.
Dude, I would say it's been a real fucking pleasure. Just
Dude, yeah, I mean, we could sit here and keep geeking out on like probably a million other things. But yeah, it's definitely been a few hours of chatting about blading, which is fun.
And